Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. How are you doing? It's Shadow at Night. It is Wednesday, December the 27th, 2023. A huge round table show lined up for you tonight. Odessa Orlowitz is joining the show. Leighton Gray, Ray McInnes, Dan Knight, Jason Levine. Who else did I forget? Wayne Peters of What's Up Canada. We've got all kinds of people waiting behind the scenes to join the show tonight. We're hoping to hear from Theo Fleury and Jamie Soleil of Canadians for Truth. Greg Wycliffe and Rob Primo could be joining the show later on tonight. I'm thinking maybe Randy Hillier at some point will be joining the show. Chris Barber, Pat King, and Tamara Leach have all been asked, and at some point tonight, they will be popping on. Hopefully, we'll keep our fingers crossed. But we've got a very, very, very strong roundtable to open the show tonight in just a couple of minutes. If you're watching on Facebook, don't forget to like and share. Get it out there to as many people as you possibly can. If you're watching on Rumble, you hit the share button beneath the screen. That will highlight the URL to this particular episode of the show. And from there, you can share it to your favorite social media, email, or groups. If you're watching on X tonight, it's a reshare and a heart. Thank you very much for doing that. The Shadow at Night live stream is brought to you by Canada Nano Silver, canadanosilver.ca. With the Nano Silver Gel Pump, treat your skin to the natural and soothing effects of Nano Silver Gel in an easy-to-use pump style. Apply it daily anywhere on your face and body to help soften, soothe, hydrate, and promote natural healing. Quickly calms and cools your skin, providing relief that can last for hours. It's safe and effective and can be used by infants and adults alike on even the most sensitive skin. It absorbs quickly and can even be used under makeup. Water-based, non-greasy, fast-absorbing, odorless, colorless, neutral pH, paraben, alcohol, and BPA-free. This, among all the other awesome products, get them at CanadaNanoSilver.ca. Look for a retail location near you on the Retail Locations tab. And if you would like to retail these awesome products yourself, get a hold of Kevin and Anna through the contact tab at CanadaNanoSilver.ca. That, again, is CanadaNanoSilver.ca. All right, let's bring on our guests tonight. Who's our first one? Here's Wayne Peters. You guys are used to seeing Wayne on the show here from What's Up Canada and LGM.news. Wayne, thank you for coming on tonight. Happy holidays, my friend. Merry Christmas and all of that. This is going to be a very interesting show tonight. Here's Jason Levine from The Levine Show. He's been on the show a few times. You guys know Jason. And Jason has been pumping this one very hard today. Hello, Leighton Gray of the Gray Matter podcast. Thank you for joining the show tonight. Here's Odessa Orlowitz of Liberty.com, Liberty Canada, Liberty Social. We have been meaning, Odessa, to get you on the show for quite some time, so thank you for joining the roundtable discussion tonight. Here's Ray McInnes. Ray is an author. What's the book again? It's about 9/11, isn't it, Ray?
Yeah, my earlier book 2 years ago came out the 20th anniversary of the attacks. It's called Unanswered Questions, What the September 11th Families Asked and the 9/11 Commission Ignored, simply following the chronicle of the stories of the 12 family members that made up the Family Steering Committee, representing tens of thousands of families, that then pursued and finally arm twisted the government at the time to actually have an investigation, which they were not planning to have. And then they monitored the whole 9/11 Commission and gave them over 1,000 questions to ask, of which 9% were asked seriously and 70% ignored entirely. Anyway, and those people, those 12 people, the majority voted for President George W. Bush. So it wasn't like Democrats out to get the president. But anyway, it's a story that's interesting about how commissions can be a cover-up. So now I have, because thanks to the Emergencies Act, especially being invoked, I ended up writing a book which is now in copy edit stage, called Unjustified: The Emergencies Act and the Inquiry That Got It Wrong. So that'll be out probably this spring, hopefully.
I'll have to see that. We're getting an echo here. I'm not sure who it is, but if we could figure that out, that would be pretty awesome. Here's Dan Knight, an independent journalist out of Vancouver with a very large following on X. Chris Dacey has been on the ground reporting for the last few years now in Ottawa. Chris, thank you for coming on. I've been meaning to get you on the show as well, one-on-one. I'm happy you've decided to join our panel tonight. This is going to be awesome. Thank you all for coming on the show tonight. Again, you guys watching right now, don't forget to like and share. Let's get this out there to as many people as we possibly can. It's important. Before we get into what's in store for 24, and I think all of us have our own ideas as to what may yet come. Let me ask you guys, and this is going to be a true round table discussion. Anybody who feels like talking, go ahead and open your mouth first. And all I'm going to be here is a traffic cop. Let's start with you, Odessa. What was the most positive thing in your mind that happened in 2023?
Before we do that, if everybody mutes, then we won't have the echo problem. But I know you know that, Shadoe.
That's great. I was just kind of hoping we could track that down. I think it's Wayne personally, but I don't know. It's like playing a game of Clue here.
I think it's Wayne.
Wayne Peters in the dining room with a candlestick. Anyway,
I think this group looks more like Hollywood Square, Shadoe.
So
we need one more in the middle.
I spent all this time thinking about 2024, and now you're asking me the best thing that happened in 2023?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
That it wasn't 2024, and it was that sort of lull of kind of normalcy. Besides looking at the antics of Trudeau, you know, we somewhat had our freedoms, and it was a nice sort of time to travel, be normal. I have to say, yeah, the best part was that. The worst part was all the people that are continuing to get blood clots and all that, but we won't go there because you want to keep this on Facebook. But the best thing was that it was somewhat normal.
Well, you know what? We could all go back even a little bit further to 2022 after the convoy was broken up by the Emergencies Act and the police thuggery that happened in the streets of Ottawa. Chris, I know you were there filming a lot of that stuff. Do you think, even though the convoy really helped globally, I think that was a very big turning point in a lot of people globally waking up, but did it somehow shatter or at least wound the freedom movement or splinter the freedom movement here in Canada?
Are you asking me?
Yes,
splintered
I am.
is yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of things that have splintered over time, I suppose. It's hard to even discuss this as freedom movement at this point. I think the convoy brought us all together, and after the way we were taken out, and I mean, there was a lot of nastiness that followed that. It was a pretty bleak time in Ottawa then, and I mean, it still is now. For someone who's stuck in it like me, it's kind of been a situation where we had a lot of support, a lot of people trying to help, and slowly people were kind of dropping out. And like Odessa said, you know, people kind of went back to normalcy this year. For me, it was very different. I watched a lot of things going on in Ottawa, a lot of the same problems continuing, and a lot of people that kind of splintered off. And I mean, some for all kinds of different reasons, right? Different groups are trying to do things different ways. But also, there was a lot of people that had to get back to life, had to deal with things. So, I mean, it's kind of evolved numerous times for me. But I'm kind of in a vacuum here, so maybe I have a different perspective than some of the others. But I've seen a lot of groups fall off the map. I've seen infighting. I've also seen some good come out of it and some really good connections. So there's both sides to that, I guess.
Do you think that maybe people are trying to rekindle or recapture the feeling that we got from that Freedom Convoy? And I'm referring specifically to what wound up being known as the Nonvoy that happened a few months ago. I think it was led by Freedom George and Ron Clark. And I do not want to disparage either one of those two because I know their hearts are absolutely in this. But I think that, you know, that one video that came out, I forget who it was. It just looked like a fight was breaking out where the camp was, and it was a sad sight to see. And when we have negative things like that happen within the freedom movement in Canada, I think it deflates a whole bunch of people. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was there for that incident actually, and when those people came out. So one of the other people that was quite involved with that was Norman Blanchfield, who's actually on trial right now in Ottawa for stuff that stemmed from Rolling Thunder. So I was around a lot. I know Norm quite well, and I've gotten to know George and some of those guys quite well. And I mean, I think the intention was very good. I don't have anything bad to say about any of those people personally, but like that was like an extreme, exaggerated example of some of what goes on. So you know, you have a group that's trying to do something, and then there was a couple of people that came in, and it went south pretty quick. For anyone that saw that video, it was a wild scene. I don't think that was indicative of what was really going on as the greater thing going on. But like you said, like trying to capture that moment. A lot of people have been trying to do that over 2 years now. And in my opinion, I don't think anyone has managed to. And I don't think it's something that we can capture and recreate again. I think it's something we can remember and build off of. But I think the approach of trying to do something like that, I don't think it's logistically possible. I don't think the same type of conditions exist now that existed then to cause it. So, I mean, there is positive and negative from that, but I don't think we can recreate what happened.
Unless, of course, something crazy happens in 2024, and we're going to get to that.
No, that's
Leighton
possible.
Gray is the host of the Gray Matter podcast. Leighton, you've also been working on numerous cases for people who have been wronged by the government overreach over the past few years. How do you see, or how have you seen things rolling out since the convoy? Are you seeing more people come to you with actual cases, or is it starting to slow down now?
Well, actually, and you and I talked about this when I was on your show recently, Shadoe, that, or maybe it was when you were on my show, that I'm optimistic. I think that the communist takeover of the entire world, which is really a takeover by evil spirits, was what we saw, continuing in 2023. But I see it starting to weaken and slow down as more people awaken and, and remember their personal power. The general public, I think, will continue to grow, their distrust of medicine, science, government, mainstream media, and all the other related parties who colluded to destroy the public, where they stood over the past 4 years. And I think it has to get worse before it gets better, because the worse it gets, the more obvious it becomes. But I think the thing that we're going to see in 2024 is that people will start to realize, that sitting on the couch, sitting on the fence, watching TV and doing nothing just isn't an option anymore. Millions more people in 2024, I predict, will take action against their corrupt governments. We're seeing this, for example, what's happening in Argentina. We're seeing the election of different governments in places like Holland. And we are indeed having victories. And, with every obviously satanic implementation of a policy by our corrupt governments and their personal advertising wing, which I call the lamestream media, they destroy themselves by their own hand and by giving the public greater and greater reasons to take action against them. So I think that that freedom will reign supreme once again in the next 5 years or so. But we've got to do everything we can in 2024 to become as independent as possible. And I think that's really key, because it's important to remember, and I don't want to frighten anybody listening to this, but, Justin Trudeau could actually sit, like Horton on the egg until October of 2026. He has actually a 5-year mandate that has nearly 3 more years left. And I think the more people wake up and apply pressure. One great example we saw recently was this wonderful petition that circulated, got nearly 400,000 signatures. I think we've got to apply that kind of pressure, because they're not going to stop the evil. The latest one is, of course, universal basic income, which is catastrophic on many different levels. But I think that 2024 is going to see this increasing trend that we saw in 2022, starting with the convoy, and 2023, where more and more people are awakening to the reality that this government is not working for us, that it's working against us.
Well, we are seeing, as you point out, the evil Marxist corporate media is almost dead. I think that the latest poll shows 42 or 43% of Canadians do not trust the left-wing corporate media. That poll's already 6 months old. I think when they do another one, it's going to be even a higher number, and that's why we've got more and more independent media, more and more independent journalists coming on board. Wayne, you've been doing this for a while now with What's Up Canada and with LGM. News. How have you seen this unfolding for the past couple of years? And you've got to unmute yourself, my friend.
I think the victories in the best part of 2023 were the ripple effects of 2022. Without the convoy in 2022, we wouldn't have Christine Anderson on our side. We wouldn't have seen what happened in the Netherlands with the change in government. We wouldn't have seen people like Bruce McGray, the FAA whistleblower, who has absolutely gutted the abuse and crimes done to the airline industry. And these people are openly declaring that the reason they're doing what they are doing is because of the inspiration provided by the convoy. So as much as we want to internalize everything about the convoy, I think that we have not even begun to see the ripple effects on their way back from all of those events. So, you know, out of that came the NI, and so many doctors and collaborations that have really impacted long term. They have changed the course of this agenda against us. Their courage and inspiration. If there's one thing that does, is courage begets courage. We're showing the world what Canadians are made of. We do have a identity. We may not all agree what that is, but we do agree that what they're trying to do is not it. So I think one of the things that we have to watch out for in 2024 is to not take the bait of the wedge issues that they provide for us. Everything that happens is instigated and triggered by a wedge issue that we can choose to take part in or not, and we will never change the existing system by playing their game. We need to continue to build alternative universes, ecosystems, and environments that make theirs slate, and that, I think, is what's changing around the world most exponentially.
Dan Knight is on the show for the first time tonight out of Vancouver. Dan, you have been really posting some interesting and thought-provoking things on X that I've really noticed in the last few months. When did you start coming on board and becoming more active in the freedom movement, particularly as a blogger online?
Well, it should be probably COVID. To be honest with all of you, I should be writing about MMA. I shouldn't be writing about any of this. But seriously, I was writing about John Jones doing steroids before any of this happened. COVID happened, and I just started seeing like the injustices of this government. And, you kind of take for granted that they were, that they were benevolent or that they had good intentions. And then we see that, there was this grab for power. And I started writing about it, and it's the mainstream media seems like nobody really trusts them, and there's kind of a vacuum of American media that takes a lot of the oxygen out of Canadian news. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to provide a platform for Canadians to find our news interesting. So I provide information on committee meetings, provide information on like reports, stuff that the mainstream media doesn't report on. I'm not sure how many of you guys read about the POEC report from page to page. I read it, and it was a nothing burger. The fact that they actually said that the Emergency Act was justified based on that report, I find appalling. If you read it, you would see that they basically painted the Freedom Convoy as as a basically terrorists. They were malcontent. They were troublemakers, and they didn't really have any legs to stand on when you actually read the report. A lot of it was conjecture. A lot of it was they kind of touched upon Coots a little bit, but they didn't really get into the meat and potatoes of like what the Freedom Convoy actually talked about. So that was my first step into Canadian politics, and from there we've gotten into the We scandal. From there, we've also gotten into the recent thing with ArriveCan, the $53 million contract that was awarded to GC Strategies. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. Basically, GC Strategies was awarded a $53 million contract to basically, they got paid $11 million to be a LinkedIn recruiter. So that's kind of the corruption that we've kind of reported on my blog on X. And it's appalling. It's appalling that the mainstream media is not reporting on this. So I was listening to Wayne and what he was saying about the mainstream media. It's I think it's almost one half of the mainstream media is being paid by the government. And if anyone here thinks that the mainstream media is on your side, you have another thing coming. This is going to be the first election coming up, whether it's 24, 25, or 26. This is going to be the first election where we have the mainstream media has a stake on who actually wins the election. Every reporter from the CBC to the Globe and Mail is going to have a stake in who wins this next election. And it's going to be frightening. It's going to be frightening what they say about Pierre Poilievre. It's going to be frightening what they say about all of the Conservatives. and they're basically going to try to raise Justin Trudeau on a pedestal. And you know, there's actually I was reading Andy Lee's blog the other day, and WeChat is already perpetuating Justin Trudeau on a pedestal. They have their platforms, and from what I understand from what WeChat is, it's basically a Facebook Messenger hybrid controlled by the CCP. Now they're already putting out their disinformation campaigns about Justin Trudeau, and it's very frightening what's going to happen next election.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I remember asking you to come on the show a couple of months ago, and what did you say? It was, I talk about politics. I don't go down rabbit holes. I don't want to discuss any of that stuff. And if you don't discuss that stuff, then I'll come on. But if you don't.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I was talking, like, there's some stuff I didn't really want to, I only started looking at the WeChat, like the WeChat recently with the foreign interference. And that's kind of what led me go down this rabbit hole. And it's very frightening. Because if you look at WeChat, it has 1 billion people using that platform, and a lot of them are using it from Canada. I've actually approached a lot of MPs here in Canada about what their stance on, like, whether or not we should block it, and none of them want to touch it. They're very frightened. They're like, a lot of people use this platform. We don't want to touch like any petition that involves us banning this platform. So there's a lot of fear within the government about touching that apparatus. Right now we have, I'm trying to think of like which committee is touching it. I believe it's the ethics committee, and they're basically investigating TikTok, and I hope that they investigate WeChat. They're basically just discussing like what the algorithm, and it is very scary because if you look at like TikTok, it's 30-second videos, and it basically, like, it's not us that really don't digest that information. It's the younger generation. And what's scary about that is that the younger generation are looking at these videos 30 seconds at a time. And if the CCP is actually controlling this platform, they can actually alter the behavior or the opinion of a lot of people. Let's just say that they put pro-Palestine videos in front of them, the atrocities of like what's going on in that war in front of like hundreds of thousands of youth. Well, what do you think the outcome is that going to be? And they don't actually see what's going on the other side. Do you think that the younger generation is actually going to have an objective opinion on this? No, because they're actually getting a one-sided thing, and that's from TikTok, that's from WeChat.
No, it's interesting that you talk about this like it's hypothetical.
No, it's not hypothetical. It's actually happening. No, it's actually happening.
Yeah, it's going on right now, man. We've got a lot of independent journalists here who've probably got some questions. So, guys, if you have a question, unmute yourself and speak up. Who haven't we heard from yet? Jason Levine, obviously, in the top right corner. Jason, thank you, by the way, for helping me organize this extravaganza of amazing people tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time. You have been a huge help. And you've been doing this, I guess, now for what, the past year or so? And you've been very tenacious in terms of getting your guests. You've had some fantastic guests. You do a couple of streams a day. I think you're like 6 or 7 days a week. You took a trip across the country earlier this year. I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to meet you while you were in Winnipeg for that brief time, but I want to thank you for everything that you've done and everything that you will do going forward. What motivated you to start doing this in the first place?
February 2022 motivated me. My birthday is Valentine's Day, so when he invoked the EA, it really shook my world completely. But no, it was his actions during the convoy there, and coming down hard on my Canadian friends. I watched it happen here. I wasn't there. I was in Alberta. I was watching it from here. And when Trudeau came out en français and said, look, if you don't like what I did here, the best thing for you to do is run against me. Go ahead and get support and run against me. I said, all right. So that's when I decided to run as an independent candidate, as an MP for Yellowhead, Alberta, to do exactly that, to go run against these Liberals, to get in there and do some actual work, fighting hard. My fellow neighbors were pounding on the front door during that winter, but I want to get in the back door with the parking pass and actually have an office and go and do something in there. So that was my motivation for that. And that led to the podcasting. And yeah, I've had excellent guests. I've the privilege, most of the people on the screen have been on. Hi, Dan. Nice to meet you. Like to get to know you too, Derek. And then get you guys on at some point. But yeah, Shadow, I'm really appreciating the opportunity to chat a bit about 2023. And I do want to highlight a few things that I think were positive. We came out of 2023 with the NCI report. I think the NCI report is going to be groundbreaking for Canada. I think Canadians may start to understand what this really means and get behind it and really push the government to provide us some answers around that one. I want to highlight the Ingram decision because, well, I got Leighton here. So Leighton was behind the Ingram decision here in Alberta, which really opened up some doors around accountability for COVID. We had
Leighton,
Smith
can you talk about that briefly? I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jason, but
Yeah,
Leighton
no
is here. We may as
problem.
well get him to talk about that.
Yeah, the Ingram decision. Most people here know there were constitutional challenges in multiple provinces. There was one in BC, a case called Baudouin, one in Manitoba called Gateway that went all the way up to their Court of Appeal. We had a similar case in Alberta that was called Ingram, and myself and Jeff Rath were the lawyers on it. Rebecca Ingram is a lady who had a fitness gym that ultimately she had to sell, like a lot of people, a lot of business owners. I came on for some churches. I was hired by the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. In that case, there were two important legal arguments. One was the charter argument, which proved to be unsuccessful in BC and Manitoba. In other words, in those jurisdictions, as well as in Alberta, essentially the government conceded that certain charter rights were violated, including freedom of association, freedom of religion, Section 7 of the Charter, the right to life, liberty, and security of the person. But of course, in each case, the government or the courts, I should say, firstly took judicial notice of something called a pandemic, and then they essentially decided that in misapplying a case called a test and a case called Oakes from the Supreme Court of Canada, essentially found that every single charter violation was justified in the public interest because we were trying to save the healthcare system. What was distinct about the Ingram case, and the reason why it was a victory, was because in addition to raising the charter argument, we also argued that the Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, who I'm thankful to say was fired not long after I cross-examined her for 4 days, that her decisions, actually, every single health order in Alberta was illegal because she had exceeded her statutory authority. And just to stop and think about that for a moment, the wording of the statute, Premier Kenney and his government actually gave her absolute power. The wording was she could use any means necessary in law. That's the Promethean power to do anything you like, basically. And she even exceeded that. She went too far because the wording of the law was such that she was appointed as an expert to make these decisions. And instead, it turns out, it was revealed during the course of the trial that we ran that she was essentially a straw person, and that she was going back to Premier Kenney and cabinet, and she was getting her signals from home plate, and that actually all of these health orders were actually the government's and not being made by the Chief Medical Officer of Health. So the net result was every single health order in Alberta was declared illegal, and this opened the door for a series of civil actions that are just getting going right now, where I expect the government is going to have to pay out in the billions to business owners and private city and citizens for different types of loss, including financial loss, intentional infliction of mental suffering, and the like. And so that's sort of on the horizon for Alberta. I don't know how that's going to translate into other provinces. One discrete thing, just to finish off this point, that was really important about the way that we structured that Ingram case. Alberta, as in other provinces, passed a law that said that you could not sue the government over any of its COVID measures, any of the health orders. However, because every single health order was declared ultra vires, these orders were all nullities from the get-go, which means there actually are no health orders in Alberta. They don't exist. And so that statutory protection that the Alberta government, the Kenney government, would put in place is not in effect. And so this exposes Alberta to civil liability. I don't know whether that's going to extend or that's going to happen in other provinces, but that's the situation in Alberta. And then subsequent to the Ingram decision, our Minister of Justice, Mickey Amery, went ahead and actually made changes to the law so that, excuse me, so that this could not happen again in our province. So this is a very significant case, arguably one of the most significant civil decisions of the 21st century in Alberta, and perhaps in all of Canada.
I think we have the first civil case, maybe not launched yet, but the guy says he's going to. The guy who has Without Papers Pizza in Calgary. Does anybody know about that?
Well, I happen to know his lawyer. He might be on this podcast. But again, within the bounds of solicitor-client privilege, I happen to know that gentleman, and he is one of the people who's suing the government of Alberta. Also, Chris Scott of the Whistle Stop Cafe, he's one of the people who has a case that's ongoing.
Got to ask Chris to come on tonight. Sorry,
yeah,
I'm interrupting.
He's great. My good friend and colleague Jeff Rath actually has a class action that is somewhat specialized for business owners who lost their businesses because of COVID measures, the health orders. So there are multiple actions that are ongoing in Alberta, but of course the case you're talking about, Without Papers Pizza, is one that's going to be very, very important. And honestly, I mean, you couldn't have a more sympathetic client in that situation.
They took his everything away, which is, pretty much par for the course for any small or medium business owner in this country the past few years. Jason, you were talking, and Leighton so rudely interrupted you that I would like.
He didn't even say object first. He just took over.
Please continue.
It's all good. Yeah, no worries. Look, I was kind of propping up Alberta because we also elected Smith for another 4 years, which kind of gave us a foundation to go ahead and push harder on our government, provincially at least, on the strong backing of the AGM that we just had as well, which we saw APP, so another one of Leighton's side projects, and Alberta, Take Back Alberta, worked really hard to make sure that some mandates were pushed forward and some policies are considered. And I really think Alberta's on a good footing now. Jump over to Ontario, where we had a lot of court cases, of course, all over Ottawa. Barber, I believe, is in your green room. He's hanging out right now. We
can bring him on here. I'm not sure if he's...
Hey,
Chris? Chris? There's Chris Barber. Speaking about legal problems.
Yeah, no doubt. He's got a few. Maybe he can update us on some of those as I try to get Chris Scott to join us.
Legal challenges, not problems. Challenges.
Sorry, challenges. That's right. If anybody has had a challenge this past year, it would be Chris Barber. But anyway, where is Jason? There, you were talking about Jason. Please continue. I interrupted you for a second time. I'm sorry.
No problem, my friend. I was just reaching out to Chris Scott to see if he's available tonight. You mentioned from Whistle Stop. Yeah, so I just sent him a text. So the AGM was great for Alberta, and I think there's some good foundation there. Moving over to Ottawa, we have Chris Barber and Tamara Litch. I really think that judge there is something I'm looking forward to hearing more from. Chris, I'm sure, can really touch on that one a lot more than I can, but I'm optimistic about his chances there and his future there. I'm not so optimistic about Helen Grusso. We've had some really bad decisions the last couple of weeks around her. She will not be allowed to any expert witnesses. All 5 were denied. And she will not be allowed her own notebook from her police notebook. So she'll be there on the stand by herself with her own memory as her defense. That will be early January. So I'm not excited about that one. Unfortunately, James Sowery got convicted and he's going to be sentenced in January. So that was another thing that unfortunately happened for us in Alberta. And then, of course, the Cootsman. I'll save that because I think we can get into that situation a lot deeper. But we had some good things. NCI report, Ingram decision. And also the Hategate. I do want to highlight Hategate because that exposed some intelligence issues in Canada here. And I think that's going to expose a lot for 2024. We'll be able to build a lot on the Hategate affair.
Before we get into talking to Chris here, I'm sorry, Jason. I haven't introduced Derek Smith yet. Derek has been kind of sitting patiently waiting. Of course, Derek is the author of How the Prime Minister Stole Freedom, and what was the other one? There's a few more, and we all, at least many of us, did a little piece of that live reading of How the Prime Minister Stole Freedom, which is on your YouTube channel now, Derek. Thank you for joining the show tonight and being a part of all of this. 2023, my friend, what has been the best thing and the worst thing?
Well, first off, thanks for having me. It's I'm an ant among gods here in this panel, but it's great to see everybody here, and again, some that I've met throughout the year, and some that I'd look forward to talking to outside of this this show. But 2023 was an odd year. I mean, there were a lot of good things that came in terms of Danielle Smith being reelected for her 4-year mandate, getting her official 4-year mandate, I think was good for Alberta because, you know, Fat Stalin left last year, or Jason Kenney, sorry, left Alberta, and we've seen Danielle Smith take the reins, and she's done a good job so far. At least I think so, in terms of action that we're seeing from an actual premier, in terms of what they've promised versus what they've delivered. It's nice to see somebody stand behind their words and not only fulfill their promises, but kind of go above and beyond what they've already promised. I'm curious to see what the next, 3.5 years are going to look like from Danielle going forward. If you were to ask me my personal greatest thing to see this year, I think it came towards the end of this year, and I'll never forget it. It's Tamara Lich getting her freedom back. It's herself being allowed back onto social media. What a way to end the year. I've said it a million times over that everyone seems to forget our pandemic ended about a year and a half ago, when we were allowed back into movie theaters and restaurants, and we were allowed to have our neighbors over again. While folks like Chris Barber and Tamara Lich, their pandemic didn't end in the sense because they had restrictions placed on them. They weren't allowed. Well, I know Tamara wasn't allowed on social media. Chris had restrictions in terms of things that were going to affect his business and his future, and all because they spoke out for everyone's freedoms. I mean, they paid the ultimate price for the rest of us to enjoy our lives. And I think seeing Tamara get some of her life back towards the end of this year, it speaks volumes as to what's going to come in 2024 to her court case. I feel if they had anything at this point, they would have brought their evidence within the first week of prosecution. So obviously I don't want to count my chickens, but it seems like they don't have any legs to stand on. But hopefully good things come in the new year, and we'll see what happens with Tamara. But I think that's a great way to end the year.
Thanks, brother. Chris, how are you? It's been a while since we had a chance to speak, and I know that you've been going through your own personal version of some kind of level of hell for the last few months. Are you okay? Is everything good?
Yeah, it's good to be here, by the way. It's good to shed a lot of light on what's actually happening in this country. And yeah, we've been kind of living it the last 4 months here, I guess. It's basically the world's longest mischief trial that I think that Canada's ever seen. We've seen rape victims be betrayed by the court system in the last 4 months here, with their cases being dropped in favor of the government going after convoy people. Tamara and I, as most people know, we have to be really careful right now. If Tamara comes into the show a little bit later here, I can't be here. We still have conditions against each other as it sits right now, as well as Pat King too. So I think in 2023, we've exposed a lot of the corruption within government. I think we're continuing to do that going forward. A lot of people everywhere I go in my hometown of Swift Current, when I've been home the last few weeks here, is it's a lot of shock and dismay when they come up to me and say, like, this is still going on. It's not in mainstream media anywhere. We don't see it anywhere other than the people that are putting it on their social media feeds. It's the only way where anybody's actually seeing what's going on here. But we're 32 days into trial here. We're 4 months into trial. We will go through a Zoom trial on January 4th for a couple hours, and we'll have another one at the end of January. Trial is going to resume March 13th, 14th, and 15th for 3 days, and possibly 5 days after that.
And it was supposed to be over in October or November, right?
16 days. Started September 5th, 2023. 16 days in trial. Like I said, we're still sitting in this courtroom now. We're home for the holidays. It's really good to come home and have some family time and get back to roots here. But, like the unsung heroes of this thing right now, my 20-year-old son, Jonathan, is basically running the business for the last 4 months, dispatching trucks, dealing with customers, quoting loads. I'm doing what I can to help from the courtroom when you get a text message from him in panic in a day, and then doing the invoicing and billing. My daughter stepped up to the plate. It's a lot of stuff when you look at the amount of pressure that's on the family around that. So
we've got a lot of independent journalists on the show with us tonight. Does anybody have a question for Chris? Does anybody want to pipe up? Like, unmute yourself and go ahead. There's Dan. Go ahead, Dan.
Hey, Chris, what are the charges against you right now? And how many days have you been in trial so far over that charge?
So we've got 7. I've got 7 indictable offenses. So Tamara's got 6. I've got 7. So they range from mischief to going against a court order, intimidation of a peace officer. There's 4 counseling charges on top of that. Tamara is basically the same charges, except I have an extra charge for going against a court order or a counseling charge. So we're, like I said, 32 days in a courtroom right now in Ottawa, 3,000 kilometers from home. We've had to take up residence in the city of Ottawa. I can basically work my way around the city of Ottawa right now without a GPS in the car, so I'm getting kind of good at this now. Usually, I just kind of knew where Wellington was before.
You're learning the city. That's not a good thing. Well, it could be a good thing under other circumstances. But is there anything you can't discuss, Chris? Like,
I'm
what
not
are
allowed to discuss disclosure, so the lawyers get a little nervous every time I open my mouth near a microphone in a podcast. But as long as I stay away from the stuff that's going on within the courtroom, the disclosure, the evidence, that sort of stuff, they've kind of let me do the podcast and keep everybody informed of what's been going on.
Anybody else?
Hey, Chris, do you know how long? Do you know what a mischief charge like typically goes long in court? Do you know how many days it typically goes on for?
3 days is what I understand.
I can answer that.
Yeah, Leighton.
Leighton?
I've done hundreds of mischief trials, and I've never seen one that's gone past half a day. I mean, you're talking about basically a mischief charge is interference with property rights, is what it is. And so the idea that a mischief trial could last 4 months is absolutely ludicrous. It makes, frankly, as a lawyer, it testifies to the state of decrepitude of the entire justice system that we have in our country right now. This is just one of the problems, but we have systemic delays across the board. And a big part of the reason is what Chris was just saying, is that the allocation of resources and the prioritization of what's important and what's not is completely out of line with, I think, the expectations of everyday Canadians. Law and order, in terms of actually prosecuting criminals, simply is not occurring. There's a man today, a rapist. I won't say his name on air, but you know who I'm talking about. Was a very serious rape case, was granted bail without even a bail hearing. And we have these poor guys in coots, that have been there sitting there for almost 2 years. So really, it really is absurd. It's theater of the absurd to have a 4-month-long mischief trial. And I think I happen to agree with Dan's comment. What we have here, fortunately, this is a game that trial lawyers play. It's almost like if you're playing poker and you have a really bad hand and you want to stay in the hand, what do? Well, you do a lot of bluffing, right? And that's kind of what the government of Canada is doing right now. In my respectful opinion, watching your case from the outside, Chris, I don't know all the particulars, but as a criminal trial lawyer of 30 years, who's conducted all manner of cases from murder to sexual assault, all of it, when I see what's coming through, and I just watch the sort of landscape of your case unfold, I think I can see where this is going. And that really, I don't think the Crown has any sort of hope or have any reasonable prospect of a conviction here, which if the system were functioning properly, this case would not have gone to trial. Our prosecutors actually have that discretion in our system, and they actually have a duty not to take cases to trial where there is not a reasonable prospect of conviction.
Yeah. Another thing we have to think about too, guys, going forward, any cases that have been acquitted in Ottawa right now, or even Windsor, that the Crown prosecutor is appealing. So the lawyers had it made known to Tamara and I a little while ago that regardless of the outcome of this, if we are acquitted, there will be an appeal on this. So the lawyers kind of said, we're going to be friends for quite some time, Chris. So get used to it.
And not to mention you've got that civil case that's kind of hanging over your head as well. What's that worth? Like,
yeah. So the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms is helping us out with that right now. The lawyer James Manson out of Toronto is going against, or is helping us out against Paul Champ, Zexi Lee, and a few others from downtown Ottawa. They introduced a slap motion here. I think it was last week or the week before in Ottawa. And so it's working its way through the process now. The judge will take 40 days maybe to render a decision on that, and then we'll go from there. The case still hasn't been certified yet. It is $400 million. If you say it just like Dr. Evil, it sounds better, right?
Shadow, I have a question for Chris.
Yeah.
So, hey, Chris, good to see you.
I'm sorry, man. That was a good line. I loved it.
So with all this time and the heads up regarding going to appeals court if you are not convicted, I wonder if there's anybody in the network out there who's really good at creating a board game called Mischief Trial. I mean, this would be kind of, like the theater of the absurd Mischief Trial board game that could, maybe be a fundraiser for all of
we
this.
We definitely need help with that. It's
Clue.
That's a big thing. Paying the lawyer bill right now.
And maybe Leighton can chip in on this, but I'd like to identify something here that a lawyer friend of mine brought up and described is we have this misconception in Canada that we have a justice system, a system of justice. We do not. We have a legal system, and that system of legalese, for lack of appropriate terminology, is the punishment. We are in an inversion of the justice system that the reason Chris is going to be persecuted till the ends of time is because the system, the entrapment, once you've entered into the system of legal control, that is the punishment, and they seek to make examples of anybody that's been drawn or sucked into that. Is that kind of a fair interpretation, Leighton?
To quote Sir Winston Churchill, who said of democracy that it's the worst possible system except for all the others. The same is true for our legal or justice system. But it's important to also sort of pair that with something that Jordan Peterson often says. And he says that, when you have any type of a complex system, if it's working well, at least half of the time, it's doing pretty well. And our system was doing pretty well until recent decades. And what you're seeing right now, the rot that you're talking about in it, where it isn't working, is that when I came into the law, 30 years ago, essentially, when you think of the trial, it was still about pursuit of the truth of a matter that was before the court. And we would argue cases based upon relevant facts and law. What has happened, it was sort of the Marxification of all of our institutions. This has happened in justice as well. Medicine, universities, schools, healthcare, across the board. But in the legal system, what's happened now is we now have a system that prioritizes social justice, which is an oxymoron, accent on the moron, where what we do is we pick winners and losers, not based upon the truth, not based upon the facts of what happened, but based upon who the offenders are, what their race is, what their gender is, what their sexual proclivities are. And so when we come to people like Chris and Tamara or the Coots 4, where they're being ranked, they're being treated differently by the system because of who they are, because they happen to be quote unquote political dissidents. And I'm using the wording, not of my own wording, but our current Chief Justice, Justice Wagner, essentially said that. And our former Chief Judge, in 2 op-eds that she wrote right after the Freedom Convoy, Beverly McLaughlin, who sits on a human rights tribunal in China, tried to explain to me what that looks like. They both say the same thing, essentially, that the Freedom Convoy people who went there and peacefully protested in expression of their charter rights were actually terrorists. And that wording, to tie that up with what Dan was saying earlier, that's why the Emergencies Act inquiry came out the way it did. And part of the problem with the justice system there, just to finish off the point, is the Liberals back engineered that legislation so that no matter what they did, it would turn out okay, right? because they fixed the way that the inquiry could work. They fixed how long you could have to question them, that there would not be any proper cross-examination, there would not be any independent assessment, that they would choose the arbiter of whether or not what they did broke the law, on and on and on. So that, in a nutshell, is a synopsis of what's wrong with our justice system. It's not trying to do justice. That's not its goal right now. It's trying to achieve quote unquote social justice, which is another way of saying to achieve the objectives that the government of Canada has prioritized.
And at the end of the day, that is by definition a democracy. A democracy is rule of the mob, rule of the loudest group of voices. Whether they're manufactured or genuine is irrelevant in the current system, because the mob rule is not a genuine grassroots rule of the voices of the people. That's the part that's been manifested and created behind the scenes, which has captured all of our institutions, which to me is, we hear this word fighting for democracy, when what we should be saying is, if we want a rule by law, we need a constitutional republic, not a democracy, because we have exactly that right now. And the squeaky wheel, the loudest mob is the one that's in control.
Well, this is precisely why we have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms, or a Bill of Rights in the United States. Is you're quite right. Democracy can descend into oppression by the majority, or in net effect, oppression by an elite minority, which is what we're seeing really throughout the West. But what those charters are, those human rights charters, are supposed to be a check on that, so that the definition of democracy that we've been operating under, perhaps in a delusory way in Canada, the United States, and elsewhere, is ruled by the majority with respect for minority rights. That's sort of been the Canadian vision of what democracy was supposed to look like. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is the latter part of that is being suppressed. There isn't a lot of respect for minority rights, at least in what we're seeing instead is really oppression by minority, through political divisions, and sort of having this I guess hierarchy of victimhood, which seems to be the way that people get what they want, using the legal system sort of as almost like a luncheon counter.
And we're also seeing all of that nonsense being amplified by the government, by the media, the left-wing corporate media, and social media, obviously, and suppressed a lot on the rational thinking side of things, at least in Canada, by the government themselves, which I find to be completely unacceptable. Odessa, we are going to talk about, because you prepared for this. What do you think is coming next year? What's in store for 2024?
Okay, I'm giving away my show that I'm doing tomorrow, but
no. Just think of this as a promo for your show tomorrow.
So a very well-known correspondent for the CBS News Network out of the States says there's going to be a Black Swan event. Her name is Catherine Herridge. She's taken very seriously. She used to report for Fox News about military stuff. She's married to Colonel Jamie Hayes, and he's a chief of staff, he's retired now, in Deputy Directable for Special Operations. She's married to him. She says she's pretty sure there'll be a Black Swan event. She said Black Swan event is things like 9/11. We already know that WEF is promising a cyber attack of some sort by 2025. Popular Mechanics, if you can believe it, wrote a whole article about a catastrophic mutating event will strike in the next 2 years. BBC is talking about it. I think it's because they don't want a free America or Canada. They need to keep Trudeau and some sort of replication of Biden in there. And so to screw up any kind of faux election where we could maybe get ourselves out of the worst at any time, if they cause a catastrophe, I don't know if Leighton would even know with the law, I think you can just cancel elections. And my friend, Barracuda Barbie, who's very loud on Instagram, is like, you can just tell that Trudeau is glib and glee, and he's a narcissist, and is like, I'm not going anywhere. And so I feel that 2024 or just into 2025, there will be some sort of catastrophe, probably a cyber attack that takes down banking. What I pray doesn't happen is the Degal, DEGAL, military report that was talked about and sort of leaked as soon as COVID happened. And it was leaked what the population of each country will be in 2025. And Canada had a third less, and America had 2/3 less. I think that's all going to shit because they're going to fill it in with immigration. But I don't know if they thought the vax agenda would go better than it did. So I think I can sleep at night that the Degal military report is not going to happen unless this Israeli war hits all of us. I don't think it's going to be good.
Do you think this is all part of the plan, or is it them like scrambling? And I've had conversations like this with Jason, with Wayne. I've had this conversation with Derek as well. Is this part of the plan, or are they just scrambling to try and fill in the holes with anything they can? Because we have created such a monkey wrench for them.
I think there is a plan, but they know they're testing us. So with the COVID thing, it's not going well. I mean, we're a super sheep nation in Canada. And what is it, 14% uptake in boosters? And most of those are the elderly in old age homes who are being forced boosted, who don't even know what's going in their veins. So I think they're having to pivot because I don't think they're going to get away with these injections over and over. The WHO thing is not going well. I don't know if you've had James Roguski on, but the WHO is failing now to implement what they want by the end of January, unless they completely cheat, but people are outing it. So no, I think they're pivoting, and I think that timing might change. I think the only thing left they have is war that spreads or a cyber attack that takes everything down.
Dan. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Derek. You got your hand up.
Sorry, I just wanted to chime in because I actually had a video that came out this morning talking about the same exact thing, that when you look at when people talk about distractions, that everything that happens when it comes to Trudeau's scandals, it's just another distraction to take your eyes away from what's actually going on. And what I find funny about what Odessa's talking about with the Black Swan moment is that Justin Trudeau's recently been making speeches that he intends to run in the next election, despite his low polling numbers, despite everyone saying, is this man ridiculously stupid for putting his hat in the ring to do this again? But I've even said to people, he must have an ace up his sleeve when it comes to all of the things we've seen him pull off in the last 8 years. And now when with his links to the WEF, and when you see what happened, well, what figuratively happened in the United States with the last election, why would he run again if he didn't have some kind of plan in place to ensure his victory, or at least to stall an election when he talks about he's not, quote, done yet? That should scare the living daylights out of people. And again, when Odessa talks about what she's coming forward with, those scenarios seem more and more likely the more that you start to look at the distraction side of, well, why would Trudeau say something so asinine, so stupid? But then you start realizing, well, hold on a minute, maybe that's the distraction. Maybe he doesn't want us to think about all the possibilities that could come from him running again. And I think we're going to see that next year for sure.
Chris, I've got a question for you, and we're going to have to say goodbye to Chris Barber very soon. The reason for that is we have somebody he cannot be on screen with coming on in the next few minutes. Chris, you were down in the States for America Fest in the last couple of weeks. I saw you post pictures. How was that, man? Because something I saw you mention that we've got to do this in Canada.
Man, how do we do something like this in Canada? I spent 5 days down in America Fest in Phoenix with my daughter. Actually flew down. We seen and listened to some amazing speakers throughout the U.S. Steve Bannon, Donald Trump Jr. gave quite the powerful speech. Roger Stone, Roseanne Barr. There was just about every aspect of the conservative movement within the United States, and I came out of there just like ready to go. But
walking out of a Rocky movie.
Yeah, it was like you just walked out of that place every day. It was all day listening to speakers and trying to find a way to push forward. And The one thing I was going to mention about Odessa's comment there too is how far will they go in the United States to silence Donald Trump in coming up month or up until November? Steve Bannon made a really powerful statement too that they're going to try and take his life. They're going to try that viciously to make sure that he has no chance of getting on the ballot in November. And mark his words, if something like that happens in the United States, it's going to be a lot of trouble down there.
Yeah, I think we need a Canadian version of somebody like Vivek Ramaswamy up here. The closest we have is Danielle Smith. Did you get a chance to hear Vivek speak or get a chance to meet him at all?
I did. Yeah, very powerful. And then at the end of his speech, he actually opened it up to the audience for questions. One of the big things that centraled around America Fest was the fact that Trump would then draw Tucker Carlson for his VP for running for office there. And Tucker downplayed that when he was on stage on the Sunday night, I believe it was. He came up pretty adamant against that idea. He said his place was better served with the people speaking the way he speaks right now.
Well, Chris, thank you for coming on tonight. And if we're going to do the Canada Fest thing, let's all get together and be a part of this, because having all of you guys together on one screen like this is absolutely amazing, and we should do this more often. I don't care whose platform we're on. Thank you, Chris, for coming on tonight. Yeah, we'll talk to you again soon. There is Chris Barber, who is still on trial. We have Chris Scott from the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mirror, Alberta, who'd been waiting backstage a while. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining the show tonight. We also have Andy Lee coming on in just a little bit, and Tiana Truthseeker as well, going to be joining the show. We're just talking, Chris, about what's yet to come in 2024. Odessa just gave us some eye-opening, earth-shattering, and terrifying news. Dan, you haven't gone down the rabbit holes that many of us have gone down, or maybe you are now after being on this particular show tonight.
Well, I just want to comment about Justin Trudeau, not stepping down. And the question I asked the panel here is, who's going to replace him? Chrystia Freeland, Mark Carney, Anita And. I mean, the Liberals don't have a deep roster right now to replace Justin Trudeau. Chrystia Freeland has like a likability of Hillary Clinton. Anita And I don't know if you guys know about Anita And, but her husband I believe he's actually director of Life Labs, which had almost $100,000 worth of government contracts before Anita And became an MP in government. Now they get like about $500,000 or $500 million worth of contracts from the government since she's been an MP. So the question I ask you guys is who replaces Justin Trudeau? I mean, I know that there's the narrative is, why would he not step down? Well, the question is, who replaces him? That's kind of what the question I want to know.
We got the housing minister is starting to make some noise. What's his name? Mark something or other? I can't remember. That's the thing. You're right.
Mark Miller.
I think they're trying to paint or build him up a little bit. How about the guy from Kingston Thousand Islands? Let's go with Mark Gerritsen.
I love Mark Gerritsen. He's honestly, it's funny because if you look at Mark Gerritsen and I believe something O'Connell, what's her name, the female version of him, they're basically like the liberal. I believe the liberal, not the government, but the Liberal Party, they'll send out like their talking points to them first, and then they fire them off, see which ones hit, and then they'll go with it. If you look at them like going through committee, Jennifer O'Connell, she'll be like, oh, the Conservatives, all they're doing is looking for TikToks and likes on Twitter. And then, Gerritsen, he's basically the Twitter troll of the Liberal Party. I mean, honestly, look at like any of his posts. You can't take any of them seriously. I will say this:
Warren Kinsella called Mark Gerritsen the stupidest man in politics. He's been around for a long time. Kinsella has, so that's saying something.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and Mark Gerritsen knows it. He doesn't. Honestly, I don't believe he has a trench somewhere outside of politics, and I know he doesn't care. Just look at the way he talks. He basically called Justin Trudeau. I remember watching him in debate, and Mark Gerritsen basically said, the Conservatives have no basis for their argument because they think he's incompetent. So how does that make sense? And it's like, you're basically calling Justin Trudeau incompetent. Like that's your argument. It was very funny. But anyways, I honestly, Mark Gerritsen knows. I think Mark Gerritsen is more smarter than we believe. I think that based on his posts. I think he has a trench outside of politics, and that's why he does what he does.
So I just
Rick?
want to respond, like Dan, like, because of the book I've written or is going through copy editing, Unjustified, the Emergencies Act, and the inquiry that got it wrong. Of course, Counter Signal did the story in mid-November about the management and supply agreement between Pfizer and the government of Canada. And it was, interestingly, Anita Anand was the person who was signing for the government. Now, I know a number of people who are, strong Liberal supporters, Liberal Party of Canada members, and so on. And listening to them talk, when I do, I would say, run Anita Anand as the candidate, prime minister, and run it in this way. And I'm saying, like, despite everything we know, run it in this way. Run it like the way that the government responded to the pandemic is like the Marshall Plan of the 2020s. It's like the most amazing thing. And if it hadn't been for what the government did, we'd all be dead or in hospital now. And I'm saying that in terms of running running a campaign the next time it comes along, no matter how crazy it is. But I think that there's been a lot of crazy stuff that's been explained to us by my provincial health minister, Dr. Bonnie Henry, and all kinds of things, and Dr. Teresa Tam wearing masks in an empty room and everything, and making people be afraid. So I think that very likely the tone of the campaign by the Liberal Party of Canada, whether it's Anita Anand or Mark Carney or someone else, or Justin Trudeau, will really take on a surreal quality.
No, and I absolutely agree with you. And I'm not saying that they won't have talking points, but my question to you is, does the public believe them? Because right now the government's talking about low. So when they get questioned about, food banks, they're like lowest GDP or what is their talking points? Lowest unemployment in the G7s. Those are their talking points. So you don't hear. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yep. Yeah, no, we can't. I'm just saying they got nothing. I mean, they have the Liberal Party of Canada has nothing. They have nobody bench strength that you're talking about. Nobody behind Justin Trudeau, unless you want to talk about Mark Carney, who is a globalist, a member of the World Economic Forum. So he would just go ahead and try and carry on what Trudeau has been doing. Do you think there will be an election in 2024? Dan, Ray, quickly give us your prediction.
I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. Because right now, if you look at the polling through 338 Canada, every party is going to lose seats outside of the Conservative Party. The red Liberal Party is going to have a red wedding come next election, and if you look at the funding
from Game of Thrones, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's going to be a red wedding, and if you look at the terms of donations, the Conservatives are almost 3-1 to every other party. They are 3-1 to the Liberal Party. I mean, I'm not sure what the NDP. I think they got $1 million last time they checked, but they're not doing so well. So what's the onus on Jagmeet Singh to call a vote of non-confidence? There's zero. There's no onus on the Liberal Party to call an election. There's none. So I mean, I see Justin Trudeau milking this one for the longest time. I think that they're going to try to maybe salvage something in 2020, 24, 25. I don't think that they can do it. I think the government, the thing is, and I heard something that was very interesting, and it was, you can say that I'm doing well, but I have to believe it. And I think a lot of Canadians, I think a lot of Americans, they don't feel like they're doing well. They're not winning. So I think, the apathy of the electorate is they're not winning with this government, and they don't think that this government's behind them. You go to, the worst thing I saw this Christmas, and I was kind of hoping that it would be like kind of nice. Parliament, they didn't have any Christmas decorations up at that Ottawa. There's nothing out there. It was lifeless. And then if you go to the malls, we had like Palestinian protests. I mean, like seriously, in front of Santa Claus. Like if I was a parent having my child and there's a Palestinian flag, like, oh my, free Palestine. Like seriously, who benefits from that? And honestly, I know what the Liberals doing. They're doing it for the Muslim vote. But regardless, I think that the voters.
You know what? We're gonna have to. No, it's all right, man. That's all right. We're just gonna have to pull you through a couple of more grinders before you start seeing everything that's really going on here. I'm getting it.
I have to agree with Dan on this, though. I don't think it's going to happen, and for two reasons. Trudeau knows the polls will not support him. There is nobody to replace him in the party. Nobody's got a record, and I think that is ultimately exactly why we are seeing 400,000 new Canadians in the fourth quarter of 2023 alone. I think that trend is going to continue over the next year as long as they can. And you add that to universal income, he will have the 29 or 30% of the vote that he will be required to remain in power. And I think that's the angle that he's going to take.
All right. Dan, Ray, we got to say goodbye. We've got a couple of people coming on. I want to thank you guys for joining the show tonight. Really appreciate you guys taking the time, and hopefully we can get you on again soon, one-on-one, or maybe do another panel show like this. Thank you, Dan. We'll
Thanks,
catch
guys.
you on
Appreciate it.
on X. And Ray,
Yeah.
Is Ray still there? Ray, hey Ray, did you have something else?
Okay, I'll just mention in terms of the 2023. So like, back in when the convoys, was when Emergencies Act was dropped, that's when I began to write in the middle of the bubble and the social distancing and all that kind of stuff. And I only got an article on Dissident Voice, a smallish American website, to write about the Emergencies Act, because I'm not a journalist. I'm just a guy who's written a few books. And so and then I was writing these articles through 2022 that were appearing on Off Guardian and the UK and Propaganda and Focus and Covert Action magazines, but all Europe or America. So, but I would say that what's happened for me this last year is I've gotten more networked with other people. I've met Clyde do something in person, and I've been on Jason's show, and met Trish Wood and been on her show, and other people, Return to Reason. And so, I flew out to do a documentary and met Chris Barber and saw Tamara for lunch and so on. And so I think that what's happened to me might be a little snapshot of what's been happening to a lot of us, is that we're getting more and more networked, so that if something does come along, some black swan event, I'm a lot more networked with a lot more people that I can talk with and think about stuff. I'm not going to be in that little silo, not new, with all my historic friends who are all very happy to go along with Dr. Bonnie Henry or Teresa Tam's latest orders. Now I have a whole bunch of people that I can talk with and think out loud and say, what are you thinking? What are you making of this? So I think that places a lot of us as Canadian citizens in a different and stronger position vis-a-vis things that the government might do that are not in our best interests.
Ray, thank you for joining the show tonight. Really appreciate you coming on, man. And we'll have you on one-on-one in the not too distant future. Thank you again.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Okay. There is Ray McInnes, author, joining the show tonight. Chris, by the way, there's Chris Scott, who's been sitting there patiently waiting. Thank you for joining the show tonight, Chris. Really appreciate. Here is the one and only Pat King and Rob Primo. Where's Primo? There's Primo there from out east. So welcome to the show, you guys. We're talking about what is yet to come in 2024. We know, Pat, you've got an ordeal in front of you. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on tonight, my friend.
Hey, my buddy. How's it going, Shadoe? And to everybody out here.
Say hi to the gang.
Yeah, wow. What a panel of superstars, man. Holy crap. I kind of feel shell-shocked at the moment. I got Chris Scott above me. I got Wayne. I got Jay. I got Leighton. Leighton, I got to give you hats off, man. You guys have been doing some phenomenal work here in Alberta. Some guys like myself just wish we can just catch some wind of that too to get that same stuff going. But you guys are doing great. Dacey, man, he's our man in the trenches, man. That guy is putting up with shit that I have, Chris, hats off to you. Rob, we had a chat the other day on the X Live there. We're trying to do a little bit similar panel to this, but I'm going to bring all the haters on. And I'm just going to...
That'll be fun.
Going to let them go at me.
That one.
We're going to let them go at me because, like you said, and like the gentleman that was just on, you got a network of people here. We are all working for the same fight. We are all doing the same thing. Odessa, I didn't forget about you. Last time I seen you was in Vancouver. We were at a big rally, you and your husband. That was right at the start of all of this, I believe. But she's on the money with some of the stuff that she's got.
But I'm very outnumbered. I'm the only chick here. Where's Andy?
Oh yeah, Andy. She keeps popping on and popping off. Wait a minute. I just heard.
I actually identify as a chick now, Odessa.
Okay.
So you're cool.
Oh yeah, I'm a lesbian. I've been a lesbian for 43 years. Just letting you all know. But yeah, what a mess, man. What a freaking mess. I've had to adjourn my stuff, and ladies and gentlemen, I got to do a shadow. This is for fundraising purposes only. If anybody wants to help donate to my lawyer fees, you can donate at natasha.calvino@gmail.com. Please make the password Ottawa. That's the only way I can be on here, because they're controlling my speech. They're controlling what I can say. They're controlling everything that I can do. Still on 10 o'clock curfew. Still can't go out of the house past 10 o'clock. Bank accounts are still frozen. Mr. Chump is trying to do his best to, play that little TikTok game on me, or not TikTok, sorry, Twitter game. He says he gave me my bank accounts, but he hasn't given me my bank accounts. He's lying. But the judicial system that we're dealing with, I've had to adjourn my trial now till May of next year, and then into the parts of July. And that's because, other people that were on your panel here, they're dealing with their stuff, and I'm not going in without having a full playbook. And I want to make sure I know what's going on with theirs before I start dealing with mine. Mine is a little bit more. I've got a couple more charges than they do because of, I can't even tell you what they were, but there's 3 perjuries anyway, and 2 obstruction of justices. And that's a miscommunication. And it's basically the weaponization of the judicial system against me, because whatever they can throw to the wall and hope that it'll stick, they want it to stick on me. And, I had the loudest voice, I think, and amongst a lot of them, many of the people, but they're just trying to shut me up and make an example out of me. That being said, it's just round and round Groundhog Day for me. I'm trying to get my conditions dropped right now so that I can go actually out into the bush again, work this winter, and try and pay for some of my own legal fees out of my own pocket. But they're stalling me in every way possible. The court, the people that take the trial coordinators, they're not getting back to us in a fast, timely manner to let me get a case in where I can get my conditions changed. But other than that,
brother, I think Odessa's got a question here for you.
Well, you said you're fundraising so fast. Can you say it slow?
Oh, sorry. It's Natasha, NATASHA .Calvino, CALVINHO @gmail.com. And then if you could make the password Ottawa, that'd be great. And anything helps, guys. But yeah, thanks, Odessa, for clearing that up. It's just a nightmare, guys. We didn't do anything wrong. I feel wholeheartedly in my heart that we never did anything mean or malicious or anything with ill will intent when we did what we did. But of course, 27 countries on board and millions of people around the world on board with everything that we attempted to try and accomplish. Well, I think that kind of made a blackface on Mr. Blackface, and I think he's wearing it very well right now. You can see him, he's trailing in the polls and all the stuff that's coming out that we were screaming about, the ArriveCan app being a scam, and then the money laundering going on through the Canadian banking system, and everything's coming out. So we won. I don't care if they want to throw us in jail for a decade or whatever. We won. We exposed it. You can't stop it. There's nothing you can do. If I got to fall on the sword, I'll fall on the sword. If I'm found guilty, I'm found guilty, but I highly doubt it. You see what's going on right now is a prolonging
process is the punishment, my friend. It's the process they're putting you through, these years, these agonizing years of having to pay, having to wait, the conditions they've had on you, and all of this stuff. And I think Chris Scott can probably attest to that as well. Chris, they put you through the grinder too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a little rough. I couldn't make hamburgers for a few weeks, so that was traumatizing.
Yeah, well,
I can attest they're really good hamburgers. I've been to the Whistle Stop.
Yeah, they're
I
not bad.
haven't been to the Whistle Stop yet, and I keep getting invited, not by Chris, but by everybody who lives in town there. You got to come out. If you come out the mirror, I'll buy you a burger over at the Whistle Stop.
Yeah, you should do that. And you should do it soon.
Clearly, Wayne is Wayne is unmuted himself because there's a massive echo.
I just have to commend Chris on delivering that statement like he just got a 15-minute major and a 5-minute and ejected from the hockey game. And yeah. So it was rough. Couldn't play hockey for 15 minutes next. So Canadian. Thanks for that, Chris.
Here's what's really scary though. Shadoe, you mentioned about the process being the punishment. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
So you mentioned about the process being the punishment, and people don't realize it. Like, not even people that were treated the way I was, or other business owners, or Pat, or some of the people on the panel, but every single person in this country and in this province is being abused by the process that we find ourselves in. Everybody. And, Pat mentioned that these things are being exposed and people are starting to see things, and things are coming out in court that we were saying from the beginning. And what blows my mind is that the world is just ignoring it. The majority of people are just ignoring it, going on with their days, going out with their lives. Oh yeah, Chris's charges were dropped. It's all good. Oh yeah, that's kind of sucked that we had to go through this, but let's just move on. And I'm watching these things occur around me, and I'm thinking about the remedy that we have in Canada. And Leighton I'm sure he's spoken about this. He has on my show. The remedy that we have, by the time we get through that process and have some sort of a remedy, the damages are done, lives are destroyed, businesses are lost, families are broken. Like, it is absolutely unreal. And watching the people that are still embroiled in their legal battles, going through what they're going through after years, and after, in Alberta, the health orders were declared illegal. Thank you to our friends Jeff Rath and Leighton Gray for that one, and actually Gil McGowan and the NDP for that matter. But it just continues over and over. But what I realized is this is nothing new. These black swan events people talk about, these horrible things that happen, and then opportunists jump on it and tyrannize us. It's been happening for 5,000 years. There is not anything new under the sun. And I had to kind of kick myself in the ass for this, but if you bother to pay attention to history at all, you see that this has happened a lot, hundreds of times, thousands of times, all over the world. And the solution is always the same. And we are in 2023, still wandering around like we have to rewrite or reinvent the wheel. The solution's always been, people just have to stand up and say no. And that's it. And it's over. And, it's like we have to relearn that every 100 years.
Mm-hmm. It's the fear. And one guy another guy who's been persecuted by the law in his area, Rob Primo. What happened to you at a hockey game a couple of months ago, Rob?
Oh, yeah. Well, the municipal government here has really targeted me. And it all started, it started at the beginning of the pandemic, but where it really escalated is when I went to this Pride in the Park here locally. And I know we're on some platforms where you can't say too much here. So, there were some inappropriate pictures that children shouldn't be subject to that were at this event in the public, nude photos. I witnessed maybe a 3 or 4 year old say to his dad, "What's that, Daddy?" Pointing at 2 men on men. Anyways, photo. So I documented all that.
These photos was at a Pride in the Park thing where they were just hanging out, literally.
Yeah, this was at a Pride in the Park where there was a drag show, and at the end of the drag show, the drag performers' genitals came out in front of the children. I had this all on tape, all of it. I put it on the internet. It went viral. It had like 15 million views or something like that. I was on American news agencies. I was on One American News, I believe it was called. all over the world. It made international news. Of course, there wasn't not one agency in Canada who would pick the story up. I called the Toronto police. I have them recorded, saying that basically this happens at Pride. It's normal. And so I said to the police officer, "Oh, okay, so it's okay as long as it's Pride season." And he goes, "Yeah, exactly." And so basically, I went through. I tried to get things done with the police. I met with the police chief. All kinds of different things. I had other people that were there come and put a statement forward as well. Nothing went through because the police told me that the image I'm talking about was artwork, so it was painted and it was protected through freedom of expression. So while we all seen the charter get stomped and, you know, hold no merit over the past few years, it was okay for these children to be exposed to this because they're saying the genital exposure was an accident, and then the artwork was you're allowed to express yourself through art. There's just nothing they can do about it. But the other thing, before we shift gears too much, I wanted to speak about is what Chris was speaking about, and I can really relate to that because, you know, like a couple weeks ago or whenever that was, where I seen, you know, Chris's case got fixed there, I was very happy for him. But a lot of people were celebrating, and, you know, like this was like a big victory, and I know it was for Chris to not be so stressed out, but at the same time, it's what these people are able to do and get away with. Like the same thing happened to me. People go, "Oh, you must be happy all your charges went away." Well, not really, because I got $800,000 in charges and I thought I was going to jail. I've never been in trouble before. I had 3 children. I have 3 children. I coach 3 soccer teams. I go to church. Like, I do everything right in life. And they made me look like some bloody criminal. And, you know, I had to be very cautious about what I did going forward from there, because I knew I was being targeted by the OPP and the RCMP and the municipal government, and everybody was teaming up against me. And I have all the paperwork now, and you know, everybody in here who's got there, I see a few people I know for sure have gone through this type of stuff. We can't just let these people get away with it. I don't know what the answer is, but you know, whether it's lawsuits or what it is, I really don't know what it is. But we can't keep celebrating, you know, "Oh, this person just showed up and you know, was following me around for 6 months to build a case of me playing at the park with my children, and then having a protest with 3 people during a lockdown, and then they just show up with a sandwich bag full of provincial charges to give to me and smear me all over the media and call you racist and white supremacist and this and that." And, you know, it really does affect you. And many ways that people don't want to talk about, whether it's you don't have a job anymore, whether people won't hire you. There's so many different avenues of screwing you up. It's exactly what you said. It's the process is the punishment. Whether you get off your charges.
For just a second before I forget, and actually I don't have much more time, so but sorry to interrupt. So what you said about you know, it was a victory, kind of, it's good to be not so stressed. It was the opposite for me. I'm absolutely livid that happened, because
that's how I was.
We were having a trial within a trial, Leighton. I can't remember what that's called. There's a name for it.
It's called a voir dire.
A voir dire. We're having one of those, and we were presenting all sorts of evidence that we got in the disclosure from Alberta Health Services, the RCMP, and the government, it showing, like, painting a picture of exactly how those groups conspire against us to destroy us. Like the things they were doing to me behind my back without me knowing. AHS, they had internal emails. They were talking about wishing that the COVID case that they found at Sobeys was at the whistle stop so they could get that guy. Another one was said something like, "Oh, this stupid guy thinks he's a doctor and knows what he's doing. Well, we're going to get him." Like that type of thing in internal emails, right? And this is going back and forth with the RCMP and AHS, who admitted that they were working in partnership. Like, so for me, I wanted to continue. I was happy to continue, because every time we went to trial, every time we had a appearance, more stuff was coming out and more information was getting out there about what these organizations do to us and how they were doing it. And when when the charges were dropped, the Crown prosecutor just said, well, apparently the charges or the mandates were all ultra vires of the Public Health Act, so we're just not going to bother anymore. There's hoots and hollers because I'm not going to jail. And I was completely deflated because, well, now what? I mean, now we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars going after these organizations to get some remedy. Like, you got it when you said the victory wasn't as much of a victory as what people think.
I just want to throw something in, and I just want to say that's exactly what they're doing to myself, the other two, a couple other people that are involved with this. I see the four Coots boys, the same thing, as they're going to drag this process out too long to where we have no choice but to use what's called the Jordan Act or our 11B rights. And then they are going to drop all the charges on us, and we're not going to get our day in court. We're not going to get the ability where we get the chance to stand up there and say what the hell it is that they actually really did. To the point that my own trial, I can't even tell you guys what they actually did. I'm not even allowed to tell you guys in this panel, because if I do, I'd be breaching my conditions and go to jail. Because if you only knew what the nonsense that they have and what they've been doing to us, you would all be standing there with smoke coming out of your ears because of what they do.
And you know what else, Pat, when they do that to you, when it goes to the triggers the Jordan, whatever it is, 30 months or whatever, the people that think they believe what the government and AHS said about me and about you, and that we were getting everybody sick and we killed people. Justice Adam Germain told the people of Alberta in the summary of his findings that I caused irreparable harm to the people of Alberta. And now people believe that. They believe
that's
that
it. That's the court of public
opinion.
opinion. They put their smear campaign, similar to what Rob was saying. They put that smear campaign out, and that's all the public realizes is the negative effects that they've said in their media spread or their media smear, and not the fact that, hey, do you know what these people are actually going through? Like when it comes to court dates, trial dates, cancellations, rescheduling, money here for this. You know, they put how many, I can't even say how many they put for me, like motions, pre-trial motions. It's like the Crown is trying to drain your retainer so that you don't have money to continue on. And that's all it is. It's like they're milking everything we're doing.
Lawfare, man. And the other thing is you guys have got gag orders on, so you can't even stand up and speak for yourselves on social media or anywhere for that matter without being thrown back in jail, right?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. Like
expense.
Endless
trouble.
The gag orders themselves. I've heard people, oh, Pat, you signed a gag order to get out of prison. No, I didn't. I didn't sign anything except for the dotted line where it said I'm getting out. These conditions that they put on us, those are their conditions. Those aren't the conditions that I signed because, well, I guess in a sense, it kind of is a gag order. I wanted to get out of jail, but after 5 months for a mischief of sitting in jail, and not only just a jail, maximum security, like for a mischief with murderers, I'm sitting on a wing with murderers because and it just never, it doesn't make sense. The process, like you said, Chris, is the punishment. Not only that, I have funds in my bank account that I'm not allowed to even touch to use in my own judicial to obtain my own counsel. And they admit that your bank accounts are frozen, but you can't have them. So we'll let you back on social media so you can beg for money. Like
I'm actually vibrating. I'm so mad thinking about this stuff right now.
Oh, like this has been my life for the last year and a half. And I understand everybody. Oh, well, you put yourself there, Pat. But if this wasn't happening, I wouldn't have had to put myself there. We know the truth of all of this. We've all been there. We've all got our Chris, like you said, acquitted of his case, but doesn't matter. He didn't get his damn day in trial, myself included. I get up there. I subpoena Dina Hinshaw back in the day when I'm trying to do, and I may have done a procedural violation. I may have been procedurally violated, but at the same time, we've been doing what we can to try and expose this shit, only to be found out that we're right. And Leighton ends up getting it with the Ingram, and here in Alberta, that is. And we're just getting beat up against the wall. And no matter what, yeah, your conditions are this, and this. Your trials are this, and this, and this. It doesn't matter. You don't matter. You don't matter anymore. And this
Rob,
shit hit home, man. Like this shit. Yeah, I'm gonna stop because I'm gonna get mad.
You're gonna get mad, Rob. Go ahead. And Chris, we know that you haven't got much more time left, so if you want to drop out, we want to thank you for coming on. Sorry to get you mad and then say goodbye, but we'll get you on at some point soon. Again, we can talk more about this. Absolutely.
Yeah, and likewise, I'd like to have you on our show here too, Shadoe. I'm sure you got lots to talk about.
Love to. Thank you, Chris.
All right. Ciao, everyone.
Okay. Yeah, there is Chris Scott from the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mirror, Alberta. We've got Dr. Chris Schumacher waiting in the wings. We're going to bring him on. Hey, Chris. Hey, Dr. Chris. How you doing? Thanks for coming on. We're going to get to you in just a second. Rob, you had something.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention before we shift gears from that subject, something I should have mentioned. So I think the one thing you were asking me about was what happened at a hockey game. So really long story short, this has happened twice now where I was assaulted out in the community. And I'm sure people can tell by just looking at me that I'm very capable of defending myself. But if I did that, I'd be playing into the enemy's hand and I would be the one that got in trouble. So I put my faith in God and, I'm very happy that I didn't react because we know they're provoking and looking for a reaction. But what I wanted to talk about is how the municipal governments are doing this thing right now, where I explained to you guys about how, we've seen this show that's not appropriate going on inside of a park. Report to the police, report to everybody, reach out to all the city councilors, reach out to the bylaw officers, reached out to everybody I possibly could. Now, what they're doing is when I got no answers from police or any of the proper channels, they would not let me delegate at municipal council, let me add, which is crazy, but I don't have the money to go after them. I filed an integrity commissioner report and I haven't heard anything back yet. But so what happened is I was going to places that the mayor was for this city. And I was going up to him, like the reporter, like I do. And I was saying, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, can we speak for a second? I wanted to know if when you funded this Pride in the Park with $5,000, if you knew adults were going to be getting naked in front of children. And he would literally start running away from me. So then I found out a couple of weeks later that the municipal bylaw came out with this new thing where they're saying they don't trust the police to do their jobs properly. And they hired bylaw officers now to consider, if I go and ask these people this, that I am intimidating a city official. So a government official, sorry, that's how it is. So if I go to my regional council and I wait outside the building in a suit, in a tie, very professionally, and I say, hi, Mr. Mayor, can I please speak with you for a quick moment just about an incident in the park? The first thing they do is have bylaw come run at me and give me a ticket. So I can't even ask these people questions. I've already been told by one of his insider staffs, if I go to his office again to try and ask a question, that I'll be trespassed right there and I won't be allowed on any municipal government property going forward. So they have completely weaponized the municipal system. So you were talking about predictions before, Shadoe. I want to come up with a prediction right now. It is my belief that the federal government is captured. The provincial government is on its way there. My thoughts now are everybody should be paying attention at a municipal level because they are coming for it. And I can promise you that. And they're going to be coming hard. And you see it with all these strong mayor powers. And all of a sudden, all these mayors, if you follow them on the internet, they're at all these different retreats with mayors all over the province together. And they're starting to click up together and do things together and start paying attention to municipal politics, our school board meetings, because we're going to see a lot of things happening at these levels now because we're giving these people power that they should not have.
Well, I'll tell you this, out west here, we have been keeping an eye out, especially in small towns with these land grabs that they've been trying to do. I'm not sure if they're going after the land in Ontario. Is there any sign that they are, Chris, Rob?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Chris.
Maggie Hope Ron can speak to that a lot better than me, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of that going on. I know down in Peterborough they have a group that's had some real success with rural councils. A lot of these councils don't even really necessarily understand the gravity or the way that they're even working. And some people that have been able to get in and get some delegations done have had success in that. But I believe this is going on everywhere. Rob hit on something as well with the bylaw thing that I've noticed here in Ottawa as well, where municipal bylaw officers are being weaponized. So, for instance, if we're down in certain areas, particularly near Parliament Hill, when they want either to get rid of our presence because something else is going on, or I mean, it could be for any reason, they'll send in a squad of bylaw officers with an alleged complaint. So they'll initiate contact. They often do this with a group, or they go after a vulnerable person, say like an old guy or possibly a woman. They come in and they try to fine these people like ridiculous, sometimes $1,300 for using a megaphone, sometimes for having a wagon or a sign. And then they initiate this contact, and often it gets people riled up. Then they'll have police waiting on standby who come in, and then this stuff gets escalated into sometimes criminal charges. And what's happening to the people that are protesting or get these fines is that they're being banned from the area. So they're also being given, sometimes they get like an obstruct or a disturb the peace type of thing that happens. And they also get banned from 500 meters. So they're effectively losing their right to protest in the process as well. So that's something I've noticed going on here a lot.
That's interesting. Hey, Jason, I'm sorry I haven't been to you in a little bit. Is it possible that we could get Andy back and Tiana back? I know that they were waiting patiently backstage for a while for their opportunity to come on, and I would like to have both of them on at some point in the next 10 or 15 minutes. So if we could go ahead and
Yeah, I'll work on that
reach
right
out
now
to
for
them.
you.
Thank you very much. Wayne's got his hand up. Mr. Echo over here.
I'll just make this short, and then I'll drop off with me and my echo and let the ladies come on. But I wanted to talk to the point that Chris and Rob were addressing there, and I think that this is an active tactic. The processes of punishment until you get to a point where you are going to prove the court's wrong or the judicial decision, what the courts, Leighton had the great word for that, they accept it as undeniable fact. They are protecting these things, these cases like Chris's that get dismissed. It's in order to protect that narrative and discussion. So these are not victories. Although Chris was dismissed from the courts, it's literally the impact of that dismissal reverberates across the country because further evidence to eliminate or exonerate or prove the narrative that the government is and the captured people in all the establishments have endeavored in, that's what they're protecting. And so if you get to the point where you're about to establish a precedent in the courts that looks unfavorably on the courts or the establishment, you're going to be dismissed at that point. And to further to the irregularities of it, I wasn't even allowed to attend my own trial. And the only justification that was given to me was because I am a journalist, I was not allowed to attend my own trial. So these kinds of things are just the absolute absurdities that they are able to dismiss. In order to protect their narrative in moving forward in this arbitrary powers given to these jackboot thugs to walk in at any given moment and decide what might or might be a crime in their book. We're still seeing that playing out, like for people like Pat and others here, COVID never stopped. And that's important to know because, when I talk to the people at Stacy's Happy Place in Alberta, on Thanksgiving morning, a bookshop that sells coffee gets 3 snap inspections on Thanksgiving just to try to intervene and intimidate customers and exactly enter people into that process. Anybody of the patrons object, they become targets or persons of interest. They're labeled potential spies. These kinds of things are continuing to progress through that, and it's all to protect the narrative. I believe they cannot allow precedents to be set.
If I could say, Wayne, who are you talking about exactly?
the captured amongst the establishment, and the when they and it's escaping me, when they accept as an unalienable truth without a discussion and dismiss when that discussion becomes up to be had again, that is intervention in the courts, intervention in justice,
Yeah.
intervention in our rights in my mind.
That's a concept called judicial notice.
Right,
And
the
just
judicial
to
notice.
finish off Wayne's thought quickly, Shadow, these things that we talk about, like Chris's case and others, the military term is a Pyrrhic victory. A Pyrrhic victory is where you win a battle, but you don't win the ultimate war, right? And that's kind of what's happening in the legal landscape. And it's important to remember in Alberta, we talk about things are all sunshine and lollipops in Alberta, but the one thing, if I'm going to throw a rock at Danielle Smith's window, is in the leadership campaign in the latter part of 2022, the thing that distinguished her from the other candidates, Jason will back me up on this, is she was very open in saying and criticizing Jason Kenney and the handling of the pandemic by the Kenney government. In fact, when she was a radio personality before she ran for the leadership of the UCP, she was very, very critical of them, and rightly so. Well, since she's been premier, it's been crickets. She set aside $2 million for the Manning Commission, which produced a very nice report, which is with a series of important recommendations, preeminent among which is the same recommendation that came out of the NCI report, and that is we need a full-blown public inquiry that has the teeth and the force of law. But it's important to remember, even in Alberta, very little has been done. The Alberta Health Services has not been fully dismantled. We do not have any sort of accountability for the people who were the COVID villains. In fact, Danielle Smith has many of the COVID villains in her cabinet right now. And as a final point, Jason again will back me up on this, people forget the Coots prosecution is a provincial prosecution. The man who is prosecuting that case, Stephen Johnson, is the same guy that I dealt with when I was representing James Coates and Timothy Stevens and Ty Northcott and all the other people. That is a provincial prosecution that Danielle Smith and Mickey Amory, our justice minister, could put to rest tomorrow, and they haven't done it. So, even in Alberta, where we say, this is the sort of the halcyon, the zenith of the freedom movement in terms of politics in Canada, it's not that great. We need a lot more, to happen. And so Wayne's quite right. These are small victories. I would call them Pyrrhic victories. The only way we're going to get, I think, to where we need to be in terms of accountability, and then from there, amnesty, is if we have a full-blown public inquiry that has the force of law, where you can subpoena premiers, you can subpoena Theresa Tam, you can subpoena Bonnie Henry and all these other people who were the great COVID villains. And I think that's what needs to happen in our country.
Wayne, before you leave, what's going to happen in 2024 in your opinion?
Well, I'm going to be doing a couple of these exact kind of things tomorrow and the next night, so I'll drop just a little bit of a teaser. I think
Promo.
that I think 2024 is going to be the deciding year as to whether humanity remains intact and thrives, or we turn into this transhumanist Borg type of society under digital control. But unfortunately, I think that affliction might come to the west rather than the east. I think that things that are going to impact it the most may not necessarily come from within our country. The geopolitical and global pressures that are taking place and transpiring are going to end the cabal, as we call it. And I think that with the collapse of that, the victory that it may appear, it is going to be incredibly devastating for the West, our societies. We are not moving forward on this planet as we are led to believe. In just a one little clue on that is 28 nations sanctioned Russia in this conflict in Ukraine. Great. but 143 nations are lining up and stepping up with their hands up in line, politely waiting to do business with Russia. So I think the perspective on things is changing on the international scale, and we need to fortify and get our house in order here, and that ultimately comes with the Court of Public Opinion, which is the highest jurisdiction in every land, ultimately at the end of the day. And that's where I see us moving forward. So that's my little glimpse into 2024. The rest people will have to tune in tomorrow and the next day for. So,
Find Wayne on What's Up Canada.
You bet.
What platforms are you on, sir?
We will be streaming that on Rumble, LGM.news, and whatsupcanada.org for sure. And we're going to be launching LGM version 2.0, which is going to revolutionize how these kinds of events can take place and the amount of information that we're going to be delivering for that. So we're going to be tweaking some stuff and showing people whole new opportunities, because that's really where we're at here. I believe we're gonna have to decide whether we want to take responsibility and move forward, or go back to the Stone Age and be green.
All right, brother. Thank you. We'll talk to you again. Happy New Year. Wayne Peters of What's Up Canada and LGMnews.org. I had Andy here. Andy Lee was here, and now she's not anymore. Hopefully she comes back. And Tiana Truth Seeker as well. Dr. Chris Shoemaker has been waiting patiently in the bottom right corner where the circle gets the square. Hello, Dr. Chris. Thank you for coming on tonight. It's been a while. How are you? What's new with you?
Oh, hi, Shadoe. I'm just fine. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm very excited to hear these many legal comments. We're doing our best on the medical side to let society know what's going on. Recently, I was in Romania for 7 days and gave a speech at the Romanian parliament and complimented the Romanian people on only being at 30% uptake of the vaccine from the beginning. Back when Canada was 90, 95% or 85 to 90%, Romania was only at 30%, even at the beginning of this pandemic, because the Romanian people, have a good feel and a good flavor of what it's be like to be under communistic control, what it's be like to have a government telling you something that you know instinctively is not good for you. So they on their own didn't take up the vax, and as a result, they are one of the healthiest populations in Europe, because they declined the harm vax.
Chris, the information on the vax has been evolving greatly in the past couple of months. Have you been keeping up on that?
I would say I'm the one person in Canada who keeps up on them the most.
All right. So can you tell us what has been happening? What have they been finding out?
Oh, they've been finding out that there's DNA in the vaxes and not just RNA. 1/3 of the weight of what goes into everyone's shoulder is actually genetic material in the form of double-stranded DNA, which can last throughout a whole body's lifetime, as opposed to just 6 to 8 months. This has been proven by McKernan and others. Sorry?
I'm looking at Pat there. Pat's been making faces, and I thought he had something to say here. By the way, Pat King is here only for fundraising purposes only.
We were screaming this, Dr. Shoemaker, and may I just say it's an honor and a privilege to be in the same group as you. I used some of your testimony and some of your work on some of the things that I was bringing out, but we were screaming this 3 years ago. We were telling people about what was in these jabs, and I want to say something here, and all the work with the commission, the NCI, the National COVID Inquiry. Is that how it was? The abbreviation is?
National Citizens Inquiry, NCI, only in Canada. Yes,
you're right. And if anybody's ever sat down with those documents and read them and see what's in them, one of my questions is for this one: how come they're not arrested by now? There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This is irrefutable proof now. The ties to activists, the ties with the judicial system, the paying off of people, the pushing. A lot of people weren't understanding about how are corporations being able to push these mandates onto people and onto their employers. But ladies and gentlemen, there's something a lot of people missed out, and I think the Citizens Inquiry missed out on this as well. Was the the paying of foreign workers and migrant workers and immigrant workers on these corporations are half government funded. So the government pays half of their wage while the corporation and the company only had to pay half of their wage. Therefore, there's the tie to the government. And that is what was being, why these institutions, these businesses were pushing it onto the workers, and why they were making it mandatory and trying to say, well, you'll lose your job, is because the government was putting their heels on the corporations that had out migrant workers, immigrant workers working for them through the immigration program.
And we had different situations happening in different countries, and that, you know, and using these different formulas, they were able to step on the throats of people. I mean, if we look at the vaccine uptake in the last 3 months, excuse me, or 4 months in this country, it's 15%. 15% of people. Now, you still see people with the masks on alone in their cars every now and again. It's not that prevalent anymore as it was 2 or 3 years ago. But you guys
also,
are obvious. Go ahead.
Sorry, you also had, I can't forget this one. You have Dan Hartman, whose own son passed away, and in the analysis of the previous autopsy, it came back as, oh, the government said no, there's nothing wrong here. So he goes and gets a secondary autopsy, and it's everything Dr. Shoemaker said. There was advanced spike proteins caught in the adrenal gland, which was the main adjuster for the young gentleman's blood pressure and everything. And the young man died, and you got the government failing to provide this. So I don't know. I'm kind of going off on it, but Dr. Shoemaker, DNA in this. You've got other things that are disgusting that are in this, carcinogenic, cancer-causing things. What is the NCI going to do now? Are we able to arrest them? Like, there's got to be something. There's got to be something now.
We got to get all the evidence.
Well,
I'm sorry, Doc. Go ahead.
May I just speak on behalf of the NCI to an extent? I was certainly a speaker into them. I testified under oath for 45 minutes. But the NCI does not have arrest powers. The NCI at best has recommendatory powers. And ultimately, it's up to police and lawyers to look at the real facts as to what are really happening, and the fact that Canadians were not allowed to have anything but coercion onto them. The people who were mandated to take shots means by definition they were coerced. And if you are coerced, it means you are not giving your true permission for it. It means you're being falsely forced to take it. And mandates created a sense of forced agreement, not true permission.
Well, the NCI in itself, I'm sorry, Odessa, go ahead.
Oh, go. You keep going, because yours is more to do with what you're talking about. I'll talk after.
All I was going to say was the NCI, as Dr. Shoemaker points out, at best has recommendation powers, and not even that. They are asking the people of Canada to forward their final report, their final recommendations, which I believe Ken Drysdale told me contains over 2,000. To local law enforcement, to RCMP, to their MPs, to their MLAs, to their council, anybody who can get this to the powers that need to see it. We know what happened with that whistleblower in New Zealand. I'm sure you guys are all aware of that. This guy came out with the actual findings about what this formula was doing, and he released them to the world. They arrested him for this, and they held him in jail for, what was it, 6 days? And I'm surprised they ever let him out again. I thought that this guy was never going to see the light of day again. We need this to happen in every country on the planet that had a vaccine
if he was
mandate.
That gentleman in New Zealand, if I could interrupt, if he was in Canada, he would still be in jail. They have the rule of law in New Zealand apparently greater than we have here.
Interesting. And Pat can attest to that. Odessa, you were going to say?
Well, it was to do with something we, Dr. Chris Shoemaker was talking about, but, we want to see all these people in jail, but coincidentally, have you guys heard about how Pfizer has just completed a $43 billion acquisition of Segan on December 14th, 2023? They become the largest oncology company to treat most turbo cancers now. So Pfizer is just, their stocks are dropping. Nobody wants the mRNA. So they've gone and acquired Segan to treat turbo cancers.
Well, that's what Dr. Peter McCullough was saying, which is completely ridiculous. Pfizer causes the problem they now say they're going to fix, and nobody bats an eye.
How's that for a business plan? Pretty smart business plan. Bill
If
Gates
you can
getting
get away with
20-fold
it.
on every dollar that he invested in vaccines. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So let's talk about 2024. I know Odessa has already answered what she thinks is going to happen and what she's been hearing that's going to happen. Chris Dacey, not Chris Shoemaker, Chris Dacey, what is your opinion as to what's going to happen in the new year?
Yeah, I mean, I have some of the same concerns, perhaps about. I mean, I don't have any insider knowledge, but there's a lot of talk, and we're so dependent on constant high-speed broadband connections that there's a number of ways that a whole lot of things could go south really quickly. As far as just on for me and what I see, man, I see in Ottawa. I see there's always a thin veneer kind of over society that for a long time you could ignore. What I see is more and more people, and the problems in Ottawa getting worse and worse. I've seen 10 cities now just across the border in Gatineau, more and more people overdosing every weekend, and a problem that's affecting more and more people. I don't see that getting any better. I see more and more people are going to be, whether they want to awaken to this or not, are not going to have a choice, because when it affects you, it affects your family, or there's so much going on in the streets that you can't ignore it. That's going to make a difference. It's hard for me to say what to expect, but as far as what I'm going to do, I'm just going to try to be in the right place in the right time, and show what I can from here. Trying to get my legs under me, and I think I'm kind of finding my place a little bit. So I'm just going to keep going, and it's a steep learning curve, but I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of stuff for me to keep an eye on and cover here in Ottawa for sure.
Let me just say to you, I love the work that you've been doing for the past couple of years, and I think the entire panel is, yeah, man. Because seriously, like, you get your nose right in there, and you don't back down, and that takes so much courage. What is the most terrifying thing that's happened to you in the last couple of years?
I mean, if we go all the way back to the convoy, the thing that really shook me the most was shortly after the convoy got violently pushed out of Ottawa. I wasn't really a known guy back then. I'd started streaming some stuff, but I was a local and I was making some noise, and I was still here after the convoy left, and that was right around the time where acting police chief Bell, was it? He came out and made a statement where basically he said he was going to use all police resources he could. He basically threatened all Canadians, said he was going to chase them down, and I kind of made a public statement, not really very happy about that. Said my name. I was down live on Bank Street, and I went home, and within minutes of getting home, there was a on my door, and there was two auto police officers right at my door, like within minutes. So that honestly probably shook me the most out of everything that's happened. To know that they already knew who I was. I was a nobody. They knew who I was. They knew where I lived. I'd actually been posting, like, I didn't even have a SIM card in my phone at the time. I'd been posting from Wi-Fi, and using a VPN. They still knew who I was, where I was. So that shook me pretty hard, even worse than the violence I witnessed from the police action. That probably shook me the most. Since then, I mean, I was pretty emotional, and it took me a long time to get over some of the emotion and the trauma, and to be face to face with police and so many different things took me a while to kind of get over that initial triggering. But now that I do it, I mean, the reps help. It's kind of like exposure therapy, right? I've done it enough times. I'm kind of able to do it with a much clearer mind, and I think I've been a lot more successful because of the reps and because of putting myself in there. And I find the lines. I know how far I can go. I know how close I can get, and I've had some really good people helping me out, mentoring me, and giving me advice along the way that's helped too.
Yeah, man, you've been doing a great job. Thank you for all the pictures you've been sending from Ottawa. They have become vital in shows like mine, because when it comes to talking about events that happen in the nation's capital, uh, I'm not going to be using any of the left-wing corporate media stuff. I'll tell you that right now, because we know who that favors. What you do is you give us a true picture of the event that's going on. And it seems to me, anyway, that you really don't care if you become injured or hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not so worried about getting injured. I've been lucky. I can't believe, honestly, I've stayed out of jail, like doing some of the stuff with Save Canada and the guys. Man, I've seen all kinds of my friends get thrown in paddy wagons and attacked, and I've seen, I've had a friend of mine get tased recently on Wellington Street. I've managed to avoid some of the worst of that, but I do get it pretty hard from haters in the public. My face is plastered on posters all over downtown. I have people that drive by, total strangers, that scream at me and tell me to F off by name. Police will flash the, they'll beep at me, tell me, give me the finger. Like, it's a pretty wild scene, but I mean, they've done what they can to me, and I'm still going. In fact, I've learned, and it's made me a much better person, honestly. When you have your entire past and everything you do under such scrutiny, it's actually kind of freeing. So I'm going to keep doing what I do, and these, honestly, the reps and the attacks, they make me better. So I don't think I'm going to slow down. I think I'm going to be a little more targeted and a little more. I'm coming at it with a bit of a plan and a bit of an idea now, instead of just standing there hoping to figure it out. So I think I'm getting it.
This brings me to an interesting point. None of us have really talked about the negative things that we've been through in the past 3 or 4 years, because we stick our faces out there, because we stand up for what's right. People have obviously been trying to admonish, humiliate, embarrass, even imprison some of us. Odessa, have you had anything like that happen? I mean, this is the first time you and I have had a chance to speak during my show or your show. What are some of the things that have happened to you?
Well, in listening to all you guys, I'm teary because a lot of you have had to be in jail, or you're going to go back to jail, or you might be in jail. I live in Vancouver, so the hell that I've been put through, but I don't really care, is not jail, because Vancouver, they allowed us to protest, The VPD did not arrest us. They were the only unvaxxed squad, that they weren't mandated to vax. So we were lucky in that as long as we stayed peaceful, everyone left us alone in Vancouver. But my husband and I, Norb, once I started doing speeches, and once Liberty, our social media, started to get a little bit of traction, every single newspaper has done hit pieces on me, sometimes mentioning my husband. But I mean, my family, they can't go on Global News, Vancouver Sun. We've been dragged through the mud. Articles about our social media that were a bunch of right-wing conspiracy, misogynist, homophobes, whatever they can say. And it's not been just all in one day over the last 3 years. Like, I'll wake up. I've actually woken up. I drifted asleep watching a show. I woke up. I'm like, why is my voice on the news? And they're dragging up something I said like 8 months ago. And, they do things like, I went to a very peaceful protest in my area because one of the drag queens they were hiring to work with toddlers was doing hardcore porn on, Instagram and all that. And it's easy to find his name. So somebody brought that to our attention. So someone else threw, a protest about this man-woman and why they shouldn't be around children, because the kids could actually get access to the porn easily if they just put his name in. And so all I said was, why are we subjecting our children? Why are we sexualizing our children at such a young age? That's all I said. And so there was this big hit piece done saying the reason why the Trudeau government is going to now give another $1 million to the gay pride event that happens here in Vancouver is because of people like this woman. And then it's me saying, stop sexualizing children. And it's just like, my poor family, they can't get away from the hit pieces they continue to do on my husband and I, but they've kind of stopped now. And so, I'll get rattled for about 20 minutes, have a margarita, then go, fuck, I don't give a fuck. Because I know I'm going to the pearly gates of heaven. And so, but
not with language like that, sweetheart.
Oh yeah, I know. It's terrible. I know that I'm sorry. But I think I don't have anything to complain about. I'm not sitting like the Coots 4 are. Yeah. Because that could have happened to any of us in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. And so I think about these guys and I have nothing to complain about.
Yeah, the Coots 4 are not with proper medical care. Jason Levine and I had an extensive program in which we talked about the lack of proper dietary and medical care going on for these men as they approach 24 or more months in prison, and they don't even have a court date yet. It's absolutely unconscionable.
Yeah, human rights along the lines of China now. I have conversations with them too. to give me a call every once in a while and just to see how they're doing. And man, this is nuts. It's absolutely insane what they're doing to them. But I know that a lot of the tactics that they used on them, just in speaking with them, they've used the same similar tactics towards me. So we've been kind of helping each other out, and I've told them what I've been dealing with, what they did to me, and then the gentlemen, a couple of them were saying that's the exact same thing they did to us. So then I said, okay, well, I did this. Try this with your lawyers, or try this, and I'm trying to help as much as I can with what I can and what aspect that I can help in. But the thing I keep hearing from those guys is, we know why we're here, Pat. We're here for a reason. And the reason is we thank you, everybody, for the concerns and everything, but we're here for a reason. And they're gonna get it out. They're gonna either, one, get taken by the 11B Jordan Act, or two, they're going to just the courts will just drop the charges, period, because of insufficient evidence. Mind you, I don't know exactly what the evidence is, but I do know some of it that is there. There's some undercover police officers that decided to flash their cleavages, which is a form of entrapment in my mind. And they decided that's how they were going to get them, by waving the old elusive carrot in front of them. And some of the guys got vocal, I guess. And that I'm not going to speak much more onto that, but just for them. But it's disgusting what they're doing to Canadian citizens, to these guys, to James Sowery. You know, he runs over a pylon. Oh my God, this officer now is like PTSD for the rest of his life because a pylon went at him. It's unreal. But I'm not trying to steal anybody's thunder. I do got to go, Shadow. So I want to give you my prediction, and to everybody,
Yes.
Thank you so much for having us in here. And I think this is phenomenal. I think you and I should talk, Shadow, with regards to, I want to do a nationwide tour with a panel such as this on a tour across Canada, if not the States as well. And I look forward to possibly doing something like that. But my prediction goes along with Odessa's. There is going to be a false flag coming. A false flag is inevitable. COVID didn't work for them. So now they're going to do something else to ramp it up, to keep people scared. They got to keep you in that scared, frightened stage, because the second you have power and you're in, like, you know, you've got that freedom to, hey, I'm going to take a stand. They're going to cut you down a couple notches. But I do know this. Anybody who knows the political spectrum that's going on, where you see you got Pierre Poilievre pandering to the crowd, you've got Justin Trudeau saying that he's not going to back down. There is something coming in that. I'd like to say that there is criminal charges, but I can't speak on that. But there is a changing of the guard that's going to happen, but nothing is going to change. Nothing. They aren't going to help us. They are not going to stop this. They have an end goal of 2030, and they are going for it. They don't care. So we're just mere speed bumps in their path to the end of this. And unfortunately, there's going to be one of two things. There's either going to be a civil stand-up group of people, and I'm picking my words very carefully on the basis of fundraising purposes only. But there is going to be a civil uprising south of the border. They're already laying it in the movies. They're already talking about this one movie. It's called The Civil War. And that's a what do they call it?
Predictive programming.
Predictive programming, yeah. So that one's coming up, and I think that's just laying the foundations of what's next to come, and that's going to be a World War III on Canadian soil. It always has been deemed in North America. They want to take down us. They want to take down the United States. I think they're ramping up, and that's what I see. So if you got bug-out bags, folks, get them ready, hold them to the side, and if you got to go, go. I'm out. Merry Christmas, you filthy animals. Happy New Year to each and every one of you guys. All know that I'm still here. I'm not out, but I'm still here. I'm still here. Thanks,
We
Shadow.
love you, brother. We
Love you,
love you.
man.
Thank you for coming on tonight. Pat King, everybody. He's saying goodbye. Greg Wycliffe joins the show. Greg, thank you for coming on the show tonight. Really appreciate it. Do you have some kind of a Christmas party, a family event that you're joining just now? It's been 2 hours, for goodness
Can you
sake.
guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, cool. No, I just decided to throw on a collared shirt. You know, I love to present well when I'm on the Shadoe show, Shadoe Davis. Oh my gosh. No, it's been quite the year, and yeah, I don't know. Do you want me to run into predictions right away, or what?
No, man. We've been talking about what's happened, what's yet to come, some personal predicaments. We've had some great people on the show already. I saw Leighton just turned off his camera there. I wanted to ask him a question. Maybe Jason, you could answer this one. There was a ruling recently by a Supreme Court of Ontario justice regarding the usage of the word groomer. Saying we can no longer use that because it is, in fact, a slur and punitive against the person we're using it against. Leighton, I'm sorry. Did you hear? We talked about this on X. So I'm talking to Jason and you, Leighton, about this ruling from the Supreme Justice, one of the Supreme Justices of Ontario, who used the word, who said the word groomer was a smear. And so we can't use that without being slapped with some kind of a lawsuit. And yet the other side can continue to use the words racist, bigot. Newspapers, as Odessa was just talking about, can go ahead and smear anybody. And I know several school board trustees that have been smeared across the country by left-wing corporate media, and they don't have to fear any reprisal. Why such a double standard? And why would a judge, a superior court justice in Ontario come to a decision like that anyway? They're supposed to be interpreting laws, not making them, right?
Yeah, well, sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. So not surprisingly, this lady judge was a 2018 appointment of the Trudeau government. So for those of you who missed the National Post article that came out last summer, actually there's a series of them. 80% of the judges who have been appointed throughout Canada, Superior Court judges who have been appointed throughout Canada in the Trudeau era since 2015, 80% of them are not only card-carrying members of the Liberal Party of Canada, they're donors. They're Liberal Party donors. So I've written and I've talked about this extensively, this concept of judicial activism, which is happening everywhere in Canada. And what we're seeing is, unfortunately, judges, in the absence of proper and principled political leadership, are taking it upon themselves to shape the views and the values of Canadians. So, for example, if you think about the situation with transgender people, if you go back to the genesis of the charter, the intention of the charter, and the framers of the charter, talked about this a lot back in 1982, back in 1981, 1982, and Brian Peckford talks about this. They were very concerned, those premiers, those wise men, about the court expanding the scope of the enumerated charter rights. In other words, what they wanted to do, the reason why we have a specific number of described charter rights, discrete charter rights, is because they didn't want to hand over power to courts to create a whole panoply of rights. But what we've seen in the charter era gradually over the past 40 years, but especially in the last decade or so, is the courts sort of reading down the rights which are enumerated and set out in the charter, and instead creating new ones. And so, for example, this is what's happened with the transgender community, with gay marriage. It's happened obviously with Indigenous peoples. All these different categories of rights which don't actually exist in the charter. The Supreme Court has taken upon itself to create them, and so this is really an inversion of what the role of the courts is supposed to be. What the role of the courts is supposed to be is the law, especially the common law, sort of lags behind society and culture and politics, and it tries to make sense of events in the aftermath and sort of translate them into law. And if you see, for example, after the Spanish flu epidemic of the early 20th century, you'll see a series of laws that came along after that, health-related laws, trying to make sense of this. What's happening right now is the courts are out front, and arguably, the judges in this country are the most powerful people in the entire country. They're undemocratically appointed. They are chosen primarily based upon their diversity, inclusion, equity criteria. They all have some degree of competency in the law, obviously, but primarily they're being appointed for the diversity, inclusion, equity requirements. In fact, most recently, the most recent judge who was appointed, Mary Morrow from Alberta, our Minister of Justice in Ottawa, he said that a big part of that appointment was because he wants to see a majority of judges on the Supreme Court of Canada being women. Well, I think if the majority of judges in Alberta, of really good judges, if our best judges are women, I don't care if all of them are women. But I don't think we should be selecting judges on the simply because a person is a woman, or they're black, or they're gay, or they're transgender, or whatever. But unfortunately, this comes back to my earlier comment about how we're not doing justice in Canada. The goal has been subverted to this Marxist idea of social justice, and we're setting priorities for judges and the judicial system, and we're pre-picking winners and losers. So, for example, this case that Greg just talked about in Ontario, or that you mentioned, Shadoe, that winner was chosen even before that case was heard. We knew how that case was going to go, because the judge made most important in that inquiry the politics, the victimhood of the person involved, and that was more important than the law, and that was more important than what our sort of societal values are about what defamation is. That was more important than our free speech, the freedom to call someone a groomer. So that's kind of what's happening in the law right now. And unfortunately, it's a very dangerous trend. These people are not elected. They're appointed for life. And as I said, they're being selected by the Prime Minister, by his office, primarily on the basis of their politics.
Anybody have any questions? I've got one. Anybody?
Yeah, I have one actually. That groomer case kind of caught my attention particularly because I was curious about how this will apply broadly. One of the big attacks on me from my work with Josh Alexander and some of the young men from Save Canada is that the left and these people as a whole call me a groomer constantly. I mean, they put up posters literally saying Chris Dacey is a groomer with my face on it, and they plaster it all over town. So what happens with that? I wonder. Will that protect me? Will I have some sort of recourse, I wonder, or will that, I'm on the wrong side, so it doesn't matter?
It won't protect you at all. They won't protect you at all because you don't rank on the victim hierarchy.
Okay.
I don't know what your racial heritage is. You present as a white male, and if you're entering middle age and you have some degree of success, that is, if you're financially secure, it gets worse. If you're heterosexual, it gets worse still. If you're thin and you're fit, it gets worse still. Basically,
checking a lot of boxes the wrong way.
It's very clear.
Chris, start wearing a
financially successful.
Yeah,
that's so,
start wearing.
That's so not fair, because I'm the one salivating over ice cream every night, and I don't do it to stay thin. And then I'm going to be treated crappy. Can I just say one thing before I forget? And then I won't speak the rest of the night because you got to get to Greg. I wanted to let you know, I don't know if Leighton, you know this. I hang out with the Abbotsford crowd, who are a lot of the East Indian mothers and fathers that are fighting Soji. And Kanwaljit Singh just showed me something where I don't know if it was just British Columbia or federally, that if you hand a pamphlet or a flyer to anybody in the public who's thinking of transitioning, and it's telling them all the reasons why they shouldn't, you can go to jail. Is that federally or provincially? And apparently it went through.
It's in the criminal code.
That's
That's
C4, right?
C4. Yep, C4.
That was unanimous. Yeah. And again, for those of you who are big fans of the CPC and Pierre Poilievre, that was unanimously consented to. That those amendments to the criminal code were not opposed in Parliament.
So that means Scott Nugent, who's probably been on everybody's show here, who transitioned in America, was on What is a Woman, is the biggest person who's saying Don't let kids do this. This is everything wrong with me right now. My body's a mess. I'm probably not going to live as long. He's showing all the things wrong with his body. He used to be a woman. And he's like, I'm not a man. I'm a trans man. He regularly on Twitter is showing what's happening to his body because of what he did. And is he going to go to jail? Like, this is just getting to be just China.
Yeah, a good way to summarize that is essentially, the law dictates that you can encourage kids as much as you want to get transitioned. Hey, step right up. You can be a boy. You can switch it around. But the second you say anything in the other direction of like, hey, maybe you should pump the brakes there. Hey, maybe this transgender kids thing is not all it's hyped up to be. Maybe there's a lot of consequences. Hey, check out this. Like anytime you try to push them in the other direction, I believe it gets equated to the same criminality as like CP or child pornography, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while since I read C4, but it's absolutely absurd. But I did want to speak to what we were talking about Chris Dacey earlier and how he doesn't check the boxes. I actually kind of disagree with that notion, because if Chris was a drag queen, it wouldn't actually matter. If he was a black lesbian, it wouldn't matter, because if he has the wrong politics, that's when they come after you. It really doesn't, like, the rules don't apply equally, right? We know this. So I do comedy and that sort of thing. And I try to point out the hypocrisy, and I've kind of stopped doing that because I've realized the hypocrisy, I get it. It's there, but they're never going to enforce these rules equally, guys. It's literally about destroying us. It's about destroying the people who think differently. I don't care if you're black, white, whatever. Hey, but I'm black, so that doesn't apply to me. We don't care. We don't care. We're going to seize power. We're going to, fuck up your life if it's inconvenient for us politically. And I'm sure I don't have to give examples of how this is the case.
Oh, bro, you were at the convoy. I mean, you saw Indian guys, you saw black guys called white supremacists.
That's right.
Right in front of your
That's
face.
right. They're
how do they even justify that?
With propaganda. And, propaganda is the biggest, most important thing in this fifth generational warfare. Shadoe, Odessa, Jason, Chris, Rob, Dare. I mean, we got we got all people who have our own channels here. And it's like that. We are soldiers in this fight. Every little video you put out there, it makes a huge, huge difference. And we need to continue to build upon that. I think it was Gray you were mentioning earlier how it's like if you're someone who likes Pierre Poilievre, I definitely don't like that guy. And like as a prediction, and as something that I harp on this all the time, but my prediction is that Pierre Poilievre of the Conservative Party could end up being our worst nightmare, because since the convoy, he has essentially been stealing our energy of freedom fighters and people who are further right, stealing our energy away and putting it right back behind the establishment. They're doing great at the Conservative Party of Canada with their propaganda, with like winning people's attention back, winning their sort of support back. And that's going to continue. And that's going to we need to really be hard against them. Like, absolutely not. Like, people need to come out in droves. I understand why people want to support Pierre Poilievre, because it's the equivalent of grabbing a bag of chips and sitting on the couch and being like, okay, things will be fine. Things will be fine. I love my Lay's chips. Let me just kick up my feet. But no, things are not fine. We need to confront how bad things really are. And a very specific, I'll give one specific prediction now and we can keep the conversation going. But this UBI thing, everyone's saying, oh my God, universal basic income. And people are pointing out, hey, in the past, the Conservative Party of Canada has supported this. Specifically, Melissa Lantsman has a clip on National Post where she's like, yeah, UBI actually has a conservative angle. And she's got her kind of weird peacock haircut. But I think that this is going to be a perfect setup to make the Conservative Party of Canada do exactly what I just said, steal our energy away, put it back behind the establishment. Because once all of this alarmism rises about UBI, all the Conservatives are freaking out, Rebel News, True North, all of us freaking out about UBI, Pierre Poilievre is going to save the day and be like, I'm actually against UBI. wow, oh my God, he's totally our guy. He's against UBI. Did you hear that? It's like, wow, he's not going to destroy the country. What a conservative, you know what I mean? It's like the bare minimum for this guy, and like we all go crazy. We need to stop kind of falling for this dance that they're doing. Because it's the same thing that happened with parental rights. Oh, he stood up for parental rights. He did the bare minimum. Same thing with the vaccine mandates. He opposed vaccine mandates 2 years after the fact. Where the were you when I couldn't go to a restaurant? Where the
no, you're right.
Their job, like anyway.
What he said about Christine Anderson too, I found alarming. The way he threw her and his caucus, the three members of the caucus, under the bus, like calling her a Nazi. I mean, that's, I think he had. Now, this may be just wishful thinking, and my feelings on
Snap
this.
out of it, Shadow. Snap.
No. You know my feelings on this, and that is that I believe that we right now are headed at breakneck speed for the Great Reset under Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland and that wingnut climate guy we've got right now. I can't remember his name, but he drives me crazy.
Gilbo.
Gilbo, yeah. So these guys, they all believe in the platform. What we've heard Polyev say on door-knocking trips that I don't think he even knew was being recorded is that Pierre Elliott Trudeau and Justin, they're Marxists. That's what he has said. I think a lot of the things he has done have been for political purposes only. I mean, how can you say to a population where 75% of the people believe that climate change is real, that you're going to come out and say, no, actually, it's not? I mean, they're going to call you a heretic immediately, and you'll go down from 41% support in the polls down to 21% if you're lucky. So there's certain things you have to say for political expediency. I don't disagree with you, Greg, but the problem is that aside from Polyev and the Conservatives, we've only got Max Bernier and the PPC, who are remarkably polling at 2 and 3% right now. It's not going to happen, at least not under Max, until we get somebody like a Canadian version of Vivek Ramaswamy to come up and start saying the truth. And I think the closest thing we have to that right now is a provincial premier in Danielle Smith. And even then, she still doesn't go far enough. And Leighton has pointed a couple of glaring problems out with Danielle Smith tonight. So what do you have to say? I mean, like, the PPC is not the answer. I mean, we got to keep holding the feet to the fire, right?
I think that's a lie that we tell ourselves. It's almost like, we're at war, we're in the trenches, and it's like we tell ourselves these lies to not like run out into the no man's land. That lie is, well, he can't talk about climate change. I can't talk about climate change. That's going to make me go down in the polls. I don't think that's true at all. If Pierre Polyev were to say that, what would happen? A lot of people would love it. His base,
I think so too.
His base would love it. This is. I think this is such a lie that we get told of. Oh no, he can't talk about the pandemic. He can't talk about mass migration, even though it's totally related to the housing crisis. He can't talk about the political prisoners. Yeah. Don't worry. Every single egregious example of the Canadian government acting authoritarian, for some reason, he can't talk about that. That's going to be bad in the media, and that's the thing. We haven't had the fake news effect here in Canada like we have in the States, because Trump showed up and said, F you, I don't care. I'm not even just going to reduce immigration. I'm going to build a wall. But the point is, the media attacked him. The media attacked him. 4 years later, the credibility of the media is in the toilet. That should have happened more so after the trucker convoy. But for whatever reason, Pierre Polyev and his team, they got all that anti-establishment energy roundabout right back behind the establishment. But this idea that we can't say that, this is part of our Canadiana sort of too nice attitude that we need to just leave behind, man. We just need to start telling the truth, and people are going to respond to that. If you talk to regular people, they're ready for it, man. They are so ready.
Oh yeah.
Like this.
Well, I'll tell you this.
Agree.
I mean, Billboard Chris and I had a fantastic discussion a few weeks ago regarding, grooming of children in public schools, libraries, and whatnot. And what I said to him was, can they come out and say this? And he goes, it's a winner. I stand on street corners every single day in cities all over the world. And what I can tell you is that 99% of people agree with me that this should not be going on. A man is a man, a woman is a woman, and so on and so on. And yet, for whatever reason, Polyev won't touch that one either, which is one he knows he can win. The other stuff, I mean, there has been, like with the climate change. Look, man, I agree with you, but I don't know that you can pull this off. And I'll give you a reason. I walked into a gas station for a pack of gum the other day because some breath was going on, and there was a guy stocking the chip stand with whatever barbecue chips, and it's really unseasonably warm here in Manitoba right now. I think it's like 1 degree, whatever. And this guy is talking to this newcomer, this guy who just arrived in Canada, who's working behind the counter. And he said, "Oh, it's never like this here in Manitoba in December. It's the climate change. I tell you, it's the climate change." Guy looked normal to me. He looked like just a regular dude. And I looked over at him and I said, "You don't know that. What's the matter with you?" I mean, and by the way, it's been warmer than this on this date in this province before. So shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. Right? And the guy looked at me like, and then he just walked out, went and sat in his truck and looked at his buddy who was sitting in the truck with him and pointed at me when I walked out the door. So I gave him one of those. And
good for you.
It seemed to me, well, I've been doing a lot more of that lately because, people with masks on, right? People who sit there and talk about the vaccine still. I don't know what his problem is. He won't go get the shot. Like, are you serious? You're still talking about this. We need to start working on this, as you point out earlier, with every show, with every video we do. We're the ones. And when I say we, I'm talking about you guys who are watching this right now as well, on whatever platform you're watching it on. We're the ones who are responsible for getting this word out and spreading it around and waking these people up in the first place so the politicians are still electable when they go out and say these things, or else, because in Canada, we haven't got this option. In the United States, they still had some regular media on cable, and they're still allowed to say things online because there is no Bill C-18 down there. There's no Bill C-11 down there. There's no mute bills. There's no shut up bills, right? They can still say things. We're under heavy restriction here. Heavy restriction. I'm getting muted on certain platforms I'm on. Facebook doesn't know what I'm talking about. Now, they could be lying, or it could be government intervention. I don't know. But the bottom line is we are severely restricted here in the things we can say and the things we can get out to people. And therefore, the only thing left to them is the Marxist corporate media. So then it's got to be word on the street, right? And until then, what politician is going to have the balls to get out and say anything?
Well, if I could segue on that, Shadoe, because this is my big prediction for 2024. And that is, I think that...
sorry for the ranting there, by the way. I didn't mean to.
Totally ties into what I wanted to say in terms of my big prediction. That is, I think we're going to continue to see explosive growth of alternative media in Canada. And the reason why I say this for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the Americans are more aware of what's going on in Canada than they have been for a very long time. That started with the convoy. But think about some of the comments that Tucker Carlson has made about Canada, about Justin Trudeau. Vivek Ramaswamy recently said something during the Republican GOP debates about Canada. He called Canada a totalitarian regime. In Alberta, we have Tucker Carlson is coming to Edmonton and Calgary next month. Ben Shapiro was here in Calgary last month. There's a conference in Victoria called the We Unify. And this is organized by a wonderful friend of mine, lawyer in Victoria, and they're going to have Dave Rubin hosting that conference. Ben Shapiro is coming to that conference. So I think that what's going to happen in 2024 is I think there's going to be huge growth in Canada of this let's call it conservative alternative media. That's going to be fueled by the growth of that in the United States. And I think it's going to have a significant impact on what you and Greg were just talking about. Because part of the reason why Pierre Poilievre can't get up in front of a microphone, I shouldn't say can't, or perhaps won't get up in front of a microphone, and say something like, man-made climate change is ridiculous because CO2 makes up 0.04% of the atmosphere, is because he's going to get pilloried by the only existing media. In the United States, they've got the Daily Wire, they've got Fox, they've got other platforms that are growing. They've got the Rogan Show. I believe that you're seeing this growth in Canada, and I think it's going to continue to grow organically with the destruction of the lame media, as I call them, in Canada. So that's my big prediction for 2024, and I think that's going to have multiple repercussions for the Canadian political landscape and for Canadian society. I think people are turning more and more to people like Shadoe Davis and some of the other people in this call, True North, Rebel, the people who are supporting and reporting truth in media, the independent journalists who are just doing it, because they have a dog in the fight. They believe in truth. They believe in preserving some semblance of what is Canadian, what are Canadian values. So I think that's my big prediction for 2024. Maybe this sounds like Pollyanna whistling in the dark, but I think that's what's coming.
I love it. I love hearing that. Derek, you had your hand up.
Well, I just wanted to chime in when people were saying, there's no politicians that'll come out and speak to the things that are concerning for people. I kind of wanted to share my experience, especially since I announced that I was running for mayor in Calgary. Now, I had made that announcement this last March after a joke tweet. I tweeted out, to Jody Gondek saying, I think I could run the city better than you can, and I don't even have any experience. And it was after a meeting with Jordan Peterson where he says, well, were you serious about that? And I kind of said no. And he said, well, could you be? Because this is where change happens, is at the municipal level. You can't change federally until you start changing lower on the scale where the decisions actually affect people's lives more day to day than federal politics. So I recklessly threw my hat in the ring, but I've reached out to some people who used to be in politics who are more right leaning. And I'll tell you right now that I'm not going to name names because that's what they've said is their personal business. But anytime I've spoken to them and we've talked about, hey, we got to start looking at fundraising plans. We've got to start looking at how we get these things, prepared, because I don't want to go into this as a publicity stunt. I want to make it serious. And they say, well, what are your policies? I said, I want to take away the rules of no protesting drag queen shows. And they said, well, why would you want to do that? You're not going to get any brownie points with that. I said, I don't want brownie points. I'm a Canadian citizen. I'm a Calgarian. I don't want this in my town. And I think a lot of people want that to change, that this should be an 18 or over thing. And they says, well, I don't know if I can help you get funding if you're not going to tone that down a bit. I said, no, you don't understand. The reason I'm running is because I've been in the same boat as every Calgarian who's had to decide, do I put food in the fridge or pay my utility bill? I've sat and watched continual Liberal mayors with spending problems. And I said, my job, if I were to get any form of a mandate, although friends like Keith Wilson tell me that's going to be an amazingly difficult uphill battle, my job would be to make those people's lives in City Hall miserable for the next 4 years, to absolutely ride their coattails and say, I'm not here for a fun little holiday or to make friends. I'm here to get things done that are actually going to benefit real people and end all of this nonsense. I said, I think Jody Gondek was placed. I don't think she was installed. I don't think she was voted 175,000 votes in a city of 1.6 million. Forget it. And people say, well, you can't say those things. Why not? And that's where I have the problem, is nobody wants to come forward and put the gusto down. And like even guys like Marty up north, when I said I was going to run, oh, I wouldn't do that. Why not? Well, because I got to put my name out there. I got people judging me all the time. I said, well, maybe that's part of the problem. You're not willing to. I have nothing to lose, which is why I'm going to do what I'm doing. And I'm telling you right now, I'm going balls to the wall, because
I don't know. They look like some pretty nice pinball machines and video games back there that you might have to sell to.
Everything's replaceable.
No, man, I totally appreciate what you're saying. And I think in Alberta, I think it's the last bastion of what we knew as normal. Let's go back even 10 years. I saw a meme the other day, and it's a man and a woman driving in a car, and she looks at him and says, are you a right-wing extremist? And dude says, no, I'm just a normal dude from 20 years ago. Right. And I think that's where Alberta is right now, not with progress and infrastructure. You guys are way ahead of the curve, but when it comes to just wanting normal back, wanting common sense back, I think Alberta is the last hope, the last bastion in Canada. And I believe the media there reflects that. Calgary, more so than Edmonton, obviously. Calgary Herald. I've read some articles from opinion writers in the Calgary Herald, and I go, wow, this is still, it sounds like the West to me. You've got the Western Standard. A lot of people in Alberta follow that. So I think that, yeah, Derek, you could probably say more things like that in Alberta. Like Danielle Smith can say more things like that in Alberta. You take them outside of Alberta and put them in a place like Manitoba or, God forbid, Ontario or Quebec, and you're going to be having a problem. And not in the rural areas, but in the big metro areas, Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, Vancouver, right? Those are the cities that keep winning the Liberals' minority governments. And I think in Calgary, you have a real good chance. I think elsewhere in the country, things are a little bit different. That's only my opinion, obviously.
Well,
Jay, go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say, I think what people forget and where it's all going to start is one city. Like when you look at what Chris Sky did with his running, I think if one city can get through, and we can see one city change to a more 20 years ago type stature, I think that's when you're going to see more of it catch on, kind of like fuel on a fire. What people tend to forget, and what I think people need to be reminded of, whether it's municipal, provincial, or federal, all of these people work for you, not the other way around. And it's been forgotten, it seems, over the last maybe 20 years, especially when we see governments who skate on policies and have scandal after scandal. That no, we should really be getting a little bit more louder with this stuff, and we should be asking why not. When you mention the middle finger at the gas station, more people need to start telling people, shut up, I don't want to hear what you have to say anymore. Like, I don't want to be rude, but I also don't have to take what you're saying as law,
I agree.
And I think
that's,
we got to get back to normal.
That's what Greg was saying earlier, when it comes to it's time to stop being so nice. And that probably gets generated with us. But at the same time, that is quite a battle that we're facing. Speaking of Chris Sky, I know that you, Greg, and you, Rob, probably know more about that campaign than us Westerners do. Did he place 6th in that mayoral election, or was he higher up than that, or was the election fixed?
I think it was 6th or 7th. I'm not fresh on the numbers, but interesting that you bring up Chris Sky, because I was just kind of tie some of what we're saying together, which is it's not even about being nice as much as it's being honest and being brave. Because the thing is that bravery is infectious. Josh Alexander, Billboard Chris Sky, all of these people basically just said no to something. And they stood up, they said, no, I'm not doing that. I disagree with that. And what were the consequences? Sure, they got canceled. They had various institutions and apparatuses coming to, try and shut them down. But with each of these individuals, there was a groundswell of support. There were so many people coming out to say, yes, oh my God, I agree with you. And we need to remember that. We need to remember that a small act of bravery has a massive, massive trickle effect. And I think generally, like what really frustrates me is so much of the conversation around politics these days, we default to like the Ottawa bubble sort of way of thinking, which is, well, what are the polls going to say? What will the polls say? What will the media say? What are the people going to say about?
Oh, you're saying that what you're saying is that we need to change the narrative on the ground.
We need to, instead of looking at the Ottawa bubble stats and statistics and numbers aspect, we need to look at the psychology side of things. Just like the straight up psychology of, hey, I'm going to tell the truth. Hey, I'm going to be courageous, and it's going to inspire other people to be courageous. And there's going to be a trickle effect. It's hard to put that into a formula. It's hard to put that into a spreadsheet, but we've seen these anomalies like Josh Alexander, Billboard Chris Sky, where it's obviously the trucker convoy, where it's obviously something that, oh, the stats didn't count for that. I thought there was no far right in Canada. Turns out there's like a huge protest far right, on Ottawa 2 years ago, right? But it's true. Like every single one of these instances proves wrong all of these like Ottawa bubble people. And I think that it's foolish to kind of play that game or kind of use the Ottawa bubble lens to try and solve our problems, because it's not an Ottawa bubble problem. It's a people of Canada problem.
See Odessa yawning there.
No, I'm not. I just needed air. It's stuffy in here.
Of course you did.
I'm not bored. I discovered Greg years ago, and I thought he was the funniest person. And my sons just laugh their butts off, and they're
Oh, come on.
teenagers. They don't laugh
No,
very
it's-
often because they think they're cool. But I just think you're the best comedian ever.
Wow,
that's why I reached out to him to get him on the show the first time. I thought, this guy's funny. I got to get him on.
You guys should come into my show. I could use you in the audience. Let me tell you.
Rob, you say that you've been really, really hounded by local authorities in you're in Niagara, right? In that area, St. Catharines?
I am. So the left got organized a lot quicker than we did, and I think a lot of people don't give them credit for that, and we need to get as organized as they were, because I'll tell you what, Antifa in Niagara here, they had 3 members from Antifa are on our Niagara Regional Council at one point, and one of the what do you call that? Oh, the Niagara Regional Police Service Board member is also an Antifa activist. So these people have completely infiltrated our municipal government here. I know it sounds like I'm telling a joke right now, but this is real life.
How is that even possible?
They like to do things like send, 900-pound transgender men to my house to spy on me and my family. So, it's the things that these people will do. They'll just stop at nothing. I've gotten really used to being treated like this, but it's annoying.
Do you think that you could run for a council position, you and maybe some other like-minded people, to take enough spots to actually form a majority on council? Would that be a possibility? What's the mentality in your city like?
Yeah, that's a possibility. I don't know if I'm going to do that or if I'm going to run for school board. I'll be the first person to admit that I don't want to do either. I have zero interest in it. So it's going to be done for the people, which is kind of what I've always done. And, I'll be letting people know what my views and values are very quick, because I think we need real leadership. I'm not going to sit around and wait to hear what people want. I'm going to tell people what need to happen. And if they don't agree with that, then they can move on to somebody else. Because I don't think that kids should be learning about these trannies in classrooms and pronouns and all this, nasty behavior going on. I don't want none of that in school systems.
All right. Let's wrap it up, guys. We're coming up on 3 hours here, and we still need predictions. We've got Layton's, got Odessa's. We got yours, Chris. I think Chris Dacey. Rob, you were talking to me earlier today about UBI. I think that's what
so
you
here's what I
wanted to
think is
talk about,
going to happen. I don't know that this will happen for sure, but just a prediction, and I've done decent with these in the past. I think we're going to see the universal basic income come out. And what I think this has been a weapon that's been in the Liberals' back pocket for quite some time now. We know they know how to garnish support when they need to. They have Canadians starving right now. They already did a trial on universal basic income. I'm sure you all remember the CERB program. And they seen that they were able to keep up with that amount of funding with the taxpayers' dollars. And what I think they're going to do is they're going to create this a wedge issue, just like Trudeau did in 2015 with weed. People were so stupid, and excuse me if anyone on here was in that category, but they were so damn set on Trudeau legalizing weed that everybody voted for this little dweeb. And now we're in a time where it doesn't matter if you have a good job, a good career. Everybody's struggling for money right now. Everybody's tight. So now we're going to go into another thing, a wedge issue where Justin Trudeau is going to be going up there and saying, look, guys, with us, if you can't find a job, if you can't find anything, our government's going to have you covered. we're going to make sure you have enough money to pay the rent, get your family groceries, and then, on top of that, you're going to get your child tax credit too. So you're going to have like an income to stay home. So I think that's going to be a big trick, and I think that's going to garnish a lot of support for the Liberals. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but hey, man, I'm just telling you what I think is going to happen. And Trudeau and the Liberal regime, they know how to turn that shit around on a dime. None of us would have never thought that they were going to win that last election. And man, these people have had this plan going on for a lot longer than we can imagine. So, we all think we know what's going to happen, and a lot of the time we do, but these guys got a lot of tricks up their sleeves. So I would say that if I had any prediction that I think is going to come true, I think it'll be the UBI, and they're going to use it as a wedge issue. They're going to use it on vulnerable people, who need the financial assistance. And, that's just going to lead us down a path of CBDC and what you'll see going forward, because I believe that's how they'll try and put these payments out to get us to sign into that program, right? And then it's going to end up being, well, you want money from the government, you can't be creating issues for the government. Are you vaccinated? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? So, I know that's a pretty lengthy prediction, but those are some of the things that I can possibly see come to fruition in the last year. And Shadoe, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure like always, and couldn't be a better panel on here. So it's been nice to be with you guys. And hi, Greg, I miss you.
I miss you too, Rob. Great to see you, bro.
Thank you, Rob, for coming on tonight. I know it's late out there and you've got kids and they're going to be waking up early in the morning. So thanks a lot, man.
Could I jump on that real quick, Shadoe?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, let's say that comes true. I do like that prediction from Rob. We are now used to a limp and flaccid Conservative Party of Canada. So if that were to happen, sorry for the visual, but that's what it is. I don't know what else to call it.
Flaccid. Okay. All right.
If that were to happen, if Trudeau will do what he does best, he will keep marching hard left. He will keep pushing. We're going to give you UBI. I predict that we're going to hear something from Pierre Poilievre, and I know this goes against my earlier prediction, but if he would say something like, hey, we're going to oppose this UBI. It's not good. It's not going to save us money. No, it's going to destroy the country. We saw the trucker convoy. We already trampled all over the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Okay, Trudeau is a tyrant. You should be using that terminology, Pierre Poilievre. But for some reason, he's always been weak. He's always been kind of, sort of padding and like it's almost like patty cake. If you ever played football during practice, you kind of do a patty cake thing where you're not really actually tacked because it's your own teammate. But like that really that's how I feel. Pierre Poilievre always approaches attacking Trudeau. It's always softball.
He did call him a Marxist, to be fair. I mean, that was on tape. So we did see him call Trudeau a Marxist.
But Shadoe, every single day, a Liberal MP basically implies that conservatives are less than human scum, like racists. Every single day. Every single day. And then what do we get back from the Conservative Party? Oh, well, you guys are wasting our money. It's not even comparable, man. And this kind of comes back to my point earlier of what I think is going to happen. This is like another prediction, which is I think that people who are further right, like myself, PPC people, they're going to get further Pierre Poilievre likes to say that he's going to stop the gatekeepers. He is the gatekeeper. He's gatekeeping everybody who's further right. Oh, no, we're actually not going to oppose mass migration. We're not going to talk about political prisoners. We're not going to talk about the pandemic. We're not going to talk about all sorts of other things either. Okay. We don't want to upset the media, guys. He is the gatekeeper. We're going to see much more of that. We're going to see much more establishment conservatives punching right and saying, no, don't say that. We don't believe in that. And I think I think that we need to realize that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party is not our friend. They could end up being our worst nightmare, especially if they're like, hey, we support UBI, along with various other things. But I do want to say, Shadoe, because I know it makes you uncomfortable, because you're like, we gotta get Trudeau out. Fair. We got to get Trudeau out. But here's the thing. Things are already moving right. Things are sort of starting to drift a little bit right. Pierre Poilievre is getting support. And, we need to keep pushing right. And you don't push right by being a simp for the media. You're not helping pushing right by supporting Pierre Poilievre. You're not moving anything. You push right by holding Pierre's feet to the fire and said, why aren't you talking about mass migration? Why aren't you talking about the Coots 4? Why aren't you talking about like whatever it is? But like that is how we push things further right. That doesn't mean that, you know, Trudeau's going to win. No, he's, you know, his numbers are not doing well right now. That's going to continue. But as people who are in the alternative media space, we do ourselves a huge favor by continuing to push right and continuing to like hold the feet to the fire of Pierre Poilievre to keep going in the right direction. This is exactly what the NDP does to get the Liberals moving to the left. That's what I feel my job is. But I encourage other people in our space to kind of do the same thing, because we don't gain any ground by saying, well, you know, maybe we should just shut the hell up and just vote for Pierre. You know, like we don't get anything from that. We gain nothing from that.
Interesting. Let me ask you guys, and I think Odessa's trying to get back on. She claims that she had a computer meltdown. I think she went to bed. But anyway, that's fine. She was talking earlier about a Black Swan event, and this wasn't just a guess. She had heard this from some well-placed people in the United States. She didn't specify what that Black Swan event might be. It could be a massive internet outage based upon solar flares. It could be any number of things. Do you guys think that there is going to be an event like that sometime in 2024? Remember that we're in Canada, and Canada is a non-consequential nation worldwide. It's become more so since Trudeau took over. The United States, however, is a different matter. They still have the #1 economy on the planet. They still have the #1 military on the planet, and it's China's job, it's the World Economic Forum's job to take them down. Do you think they'll allow Donald Trump anywhere near the White House? What did she mean when she talked about this Black Swan event? Anybody with any thoughts on this?
There's a few around Civil War, I can tell you that one. I don't think that it will start, but I think it'll be threatened. I think that people will think it will happen or is happening or just on the verge of it. I think there's going to be a new term that's introduced in 2024 that's kind of starting now, and that's going to be white identity. I think white identity is going to be the big next thing, because that's the one group that doesn't have a defense league at all, and this is well known. And I think it's going to create the conditions where white identity is going to be thrust upon us, and the defense of white is going to be a thing now. I think that's going to lead to a demonization of white people. And one of my fears
is lead to it. We're there already, brother.
No, but what I think what's going to happen is I think they're going to leverage that for the election. They're going to say that white people are scary. Democrats don't want to go to the elections because they're scared. They're going to have separate entrances for the next election. And one entrance is going to run smoothly while the other one doesn't run smoothly. Trump will lose, and that's going to kick off some major resistance and major fighting back, because you're going to see Republicans saying they weren't allowed to vote because they were white. They couldn't get through the checkpoints. They weren't allowed in. The security was too high. The concerns were too high. It's going to be along those lines, because I don't think they're going to give up trying to steal the election in any way they can. And one way to do it would be to separate both groups. Say one group is threatening the other. One group needs protection. They'll have armed guards. The other group needs to be checkpointed, and not all of them will get through. So I think that's going to kick off some sort of resistance once Trump loses for those reasons. So I really think we should pay attention to this white identity thing that's going to be pushed upon us, and that's going to be used to separate us. The black flag, though, I think is going to be water. I think they're going to claim poisoned water. That's where I'm putting my black flag check. And I do want to lead one more thing here, because I'm going to jump off shortly. I got a morning show to do.
Right.
I think some good news that's going to come is, I'm not going to tell you how I know, but a criminal investigation in Canada leading from the NCI is likely going to happen. So my prediction is going to be there will be a criminal investigation with ex-police officers, ex-Crown, ex-judges. They're coming together and they're going to be pushing forward. I do think that that's going to happen. And I also think that we'll have a resolution for the Coots situation. I don't think we're going to get to the Jordan decision, which will be about October now because of the delay with the Tolle Olenek lawyer change. But I do think that we'll be getting a jury decision. I don't think that they'll be successful, the Crown, at proving the conspiracy. And these gentlemen are a member of the conspiracy. But I do expect that there will be some charges that will be found and convicted. I do think Harbert will be the one that is freed on no conviction, and also Jerry, I think, will be no convictions along with Jacqueline. But I do think Lysick may get a conviction for firearms offenses and possibly for his participation with the protest, but not a conspiracy to commit murder charge. And I do think that Tony, for the same reasons, may see a mischief charge, but nothing serious. But
so they get time served then, right? And they get released.
Correct. My notes have them down as time served, file appealed. So file appeal. So I think that even though they'll find a conviction, time served, they're going to appeal it because they were allowed to protest. There's no reason why they should be found guilty on that. But I don't think they'll get the conspiracy to commit murder charge. I don't think they'll be able to show that to Crown. So those will be my predictions about the NCI criminal investigation. I think that will go forward in 2024. We'll get a resolution for the Coots men. And unfortunately, white identity is going to become a thing, and that'll be used to wedge us completely in 2024.
Where can we find you for your show tomorrow morning, my friend?
TheLevineShow.com. You can find me live there, but I'm also on Rumble, X, Facebook. You can find me everywhere, and I'll be at 6 a.m. Mountain, 8 a.m. Eastern. And I'll be talking actually for Shadow about my articles I just released over the Christmas break, which was a breakdown of the NCI report, followed by an analysis of the criminal requirements and investigation potential. And then part 3 was about how citizens can stand up and advocate for this and push it forward. I believe all 3 parts are necessary. Analyze and understand the NCI report, understand what criminal charges could be done, like negligence causing bodily harm and death, and then how the public can push for this. So go check that out on my Substack at jasonlevine.substack.com. And yeah, let me know what you think. But I think this will be the year of some accountability. At the same time, we're going to have the worst year we've ever seen. And I think the U.S. election is going to really kick off a potential, or as close as we've become to a civil war. I think Canada will stand by and watch. I don't think we'll do much here until it kicks off in the United States. But I think it'll be November, December. We're going to have those answers.
I think you're,
Jason,
yeah,
you're
right about. I think you're right about that that whiteness thing, Jason.
Yeah, I think it's happening. Tucker mentioned it. Tim Poole mentioned it. Jeremy McKenzie mentioned it. I think this is something that's materializing, and it's not going to be like we're not going to create it. We're not going to create a white defense league. It's going to be thrust upon us, and that's going to be boogeyman.
Yeah,
I think
Ibramex Kendi, who's a race baiter in the U.S. He got a standing ovation in front of a studio audience for his Netflix special when he said that whiteness prevents white people from connecting to humanity. So in other words, white people aren't human, right? This is Joseph Goebbels stuff, right?
Yeah. That was actually one of my predictions I was going to mention. So just to piggyback off of Jason, great work on the Coots 4, by the way. That was a very concise update that I appreciate. I think there's going to be we're already seeing a rise of tribalism. And, tribalism doesn't mean necessarily, hey, we're tribes and we're in the woods, whatever, but it's, it's like people who are in different groups, like tribalism as in it's just about my tribe versus your tribe, and with things like the, national anthem being sung in Punjabi, with things like the 50-foot tall Hindu statue, with things like even Israel versus Palestine, like these are different tribes who are fighting for what their tribe wants. And, there's a lot of white people on this stream, it's like, that's another kind of tribe. And if you haven't noticed, our tribe gets shit on a lot because we care about freedom in Canada, etc. And as it's been mentioned, the media regularly dehumanizes us. So that's something that I think Canadians definitely need to wake up to. It's uncomfortable. And I think, like Jason said, it's kind of being thrust upon us, and it's kind of unfortunate, but it's like, hey, it's kind of the team sport here, and we're already kind of wearing our colored jerseys. That's just the way it's kind of unfolding. And well, I should add, white people shouldn't feel guilty about that, because basically every single other tribe already does this guilt-free. We just get a hard time for it because the media tells us that we're shit, and we shouldn't believe that lie, and we should feel good about our tribe. And that's going to be hard because there's years and years and years and years and years of programming to say anytime that white collectivism happens, it's basically Hitler, it's basically the devil, it's basically the worst thing ever, and that's just simply not true.
Yeah,
Correct.
this is
And
something
they've laid that foundation down too, because white supremacy is now a terrorist group. So all you have to do is have any pride, and boom, you're now a terrorist.
Yeah.
I told Leighton this on his show, the Gray Matter podcast, which is available right now. My episode, which is great. Thank you for having me on your show, Leighton. It was me having a discussion back when I was still in radio, about 2017, with a young producer who worked on my show in the morning. And we were discussing why there were no white people working for the provincial government. Anywhere you went to, there's a lot of government-owned this and that in Manitoba, liquor stores and public insurance and all of that for your car. And so you go to one of these places to renew your stickers or your tags on your plates, or you go to one of these places just to go and buy a bottle of booze. And it was all people of color who were working frontline in the government. And I said to her one morning, how come there's no white people working frontline jobs for the government? And she said, well, I said, isn't it supposed to be a snapshot of our society? And are white people still not the dominant, like the culture? Because I'm more about culture than I am about skin color or religion. I don't care. And she said, well, you can't be racist against white people, Shadoe.
Right.
And I said, racism is racism, hon. It is what it is, no matter what color you're talking about. And only years later did I discover that, wow, this is critical race theory. She'd been through probably in journalism school, and I didn't know it then, but I knew there was something wrong with it when she said that. So yeah, this may be a thing. Jason, thank you for all of the help that you gave getting all of these people together today, man. I really appreciate you and what you've been doing.
My pleasure, Shadoe. Thanks for having me too. I appreciate that.
You're right. Jason Levine of the Levine Show. Odessa, did you point out earlier what this Black Swan event was going to be?
No, the woman from CBS said there will be a Black Swan event, and she gave 9/11 an example of what a Black Swan event is. But when I was looking for other 2024 quotes that have been made by powerful people, she's not just one of them. It's just everything the WEF keeps saying. By 2025, there will be a mass cyber attack. And then we also know that they're already starting to blame Russia, blame China, even North Korea. I'm like, North Korea? Give me a break. So they're already placing blame on where this mass cyber attack will come from. It could be that the war spreads as well. But, somebody here was talking about how, well, this is so great because we're waking everybody up and all this independent media is really starting to take over. Yes. And that's why they need to shut it down. And so they need to have an event for the Great Reset. And I believe it is one of them is going to happen in 2024. I don't think the entire transition is going to happen in 2024, but it will be a massive stepping stone to what they want to accomplish. I don't think in the end they'll accomplish all of it, but I think the rest of this panel's lifetime will be exposing it and fighting it.
Yeah, that was gonna. I was gonna say that was
ahead.
gonna be my prediction. The cyber attacks. I've heard things here and there. I hope not. That's gonna be a mess. I like having my Wi-Fi. I'm addicted, so that's gonna be it's gonna be a lot of challenges if that happens. And like you said, it's gonna make our job way harder, and that's gonna be the equivalent of, oh hey, you can't go to the store unless you have a mask. You can't go on to Twitter or whatever platform without XYZ. It's gonna give them an excuse to have like high tight security, background checks, whatever it is, to even just use the internet. Like who knows? I'm sure they're rubbing their hands together of all the nonsense that they want to install with this fake crisis or manufactured one.
I just want to say
go ahead
before I go. I know you guys have heard this from all the independent media for years, but I believe 2024 and 25 is the most important year to have lots of water stocked, lots of non-perishable food stocked, because if they hit infrastructure you need to have water and food. And I think probably you should have 3 months worth. Do I think it's most likely going to happen in America where it's really bad? Yes. Do I think it's going to happen in Canada as bad? Probably not. But I just think if there's any year, they're telling us that a cyber attack could take down everything. So you should have your food and water ready.
Schwab said those words. I played a video of him saying those words just the other day. They're also warning us of another pandemic when it hits. I think Trudeau said those words the other day. Odessa, thank you for joining tonight. Really appreciate it. Been wanting to have you on for quite some time. We'll do a one-on-one one of these nights as well, sometime early in the new year, maybe.
Well, I'm so blessed to have been able to sit with all of you tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Odessa. Odessa Orlowitz, liberty.com. Go and check it out. Maybe join up as well. Derek, I think you're the only one without a 2024 prediction so far.
Well, there you go. You're saving the best for last, I guess, right? That's
oh yeah, man.
Well, what do we say here that hasn't been said already? I think Rob hit a lot on the head of what I was going to say, in terms of where we're headed and what we're going to see. I think that I don't know. I think to put it on a lighter note, I think we're going to see maybe some issues in the housing bubble when they talk about an issue coming ahead for a black swan moment. Maybe like when you think about what happened in the U.S. in 2008, with the Dow collapsing and the housing bubble bursting. I don't think Canada is going to see anything as bad. But if you watch again, and I know Pierre puts out this video about the housing market implosion that he recently released on YouTube. But it does dictate a lot of what could be potentially coming. I know his solution is, hey, you elect us and this goes away. It's not that simple. But I think as you see people who re-signed their mortgages back in 2019 at the height of the pandemic, their time on their terms are coming due. And with skyrocketed interest rates, I think what we're going to see this year, and when people talk about this year being probably the worst year to come, if they thought this year was bad, is you're going to see a lot of defaults. I think you're going to see a lot of people losing their homes, especially in cities like Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, where housing has been ridiculously overinflated. As for other markets that, you keep seeing a raise in values, I think we might see somewhere around a 15 to 20% adjustment. That's my prediction, or at least that's what I'm hearing from people that I know in the banking industry as well as in the real estate industry, that we could see about a 15 to 20% correction. There's lots of people touting it's going to get much worse. I'm not so sure about that because, again, I don't think the government can afford for that to happen unless, of course, that's when they start bringing in things like the UBI and they start saying, hey, your mortgage payments are huge. You can't requalify for your mortgage. We'll get you a universal basic income. It'll cover all those extra fees and you can be working poor the rest of your life. I think UBI is going to play a big role in this upcoming year, especially like Rob said, with the Trump card on the election. If there is an election, I still think we're headed towards a spring election based on the signs of the way politicians are behaving over the last month, especially. I think the possibility does linger there. But if you were to ask my personal opinion of where the year's headed, human sacrifice, 30 years of darkness, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. I think that's where we're headed. But who knows? It's tough. That nothing surprises me anymore, especially since 2019. So my guess, I guess, is as good as anybody's. We'll see what happens, and hopefully we're all here to tell the tale next year.
I think we should all get into bomb shelter sales. I think that is a gold mine. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining tonight. Really appreciate you taking the time. Leighton, Chris, Derek, Greg, you've all been on the show before, except for Chris, and it's cool to have you on tonight, Chris, after it's kind of a little bit of communication you and I have had over the past few months. And let me just say again, fantastic job out there in Ottawa. Leighton, as always, thank you very much for your wisdom and your knowledge and your guidance. Derek, your books have been absolutely phenomenal. I hope you run for mayor. Greg, you bring a lot of common sense and a lot of comedy to us as well. And I want to thank all of you guys for joining the show tonight. Much appreciated.
Thanks for having us, Shadow. Love these panels. They're great. I love when you do these panels. You're a great host, and we should do more of them.
We will.
Absolutely.
Let's make a habit of it, at least once a month. All right, boys. Thank you very much. And for you guys, the show is brought to you by Canada Nano Silver, CanadaNanoSilver.ca. And I will catch you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Take it easy, guys. Tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central. And there goes Leighton, too. The last one. Boom. I'm all by myself. 3 hours. 3 hours tonight. I believe that is the longest show that I have ever done. And I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. I love you all. I appreciate you all. And we'll be back here tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central with a special guest from Atlantic Canada to tell us all about what's going on out there this weekend. That's tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Central. Shadow at Night live stream. Signing out. Have a great rest of your night. Great day tomorrow. Bye for now.